Chapter 81. Wei Wei Bai said this and couldn't help but reveal a very affectionate smile. At that time, I was only 10 years old, but I knew that the person I would marry in the future must be him. Sheng Xiu tried hard to think about it. Wei Wei Bai's home was indeed a place where foreigners often looted. And Wei Wei Bai was the daughter of a local official there. Wei Wei Bai's voice was soft. That person is you. You are my hero. You came to pick me up on the clouds. I told myself that no matter where you are, I will follow you. Whether it is the human world or hell, I will find you. Sheng Xiu's eyes were dry. He did go to that place and killed foreign enemies, but he couldn't remember if he had saved a lovely girl. Wei Wei Bai was drunk and hazy. She smiled and said, "You see, I found you. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 90. System, listening to the host's serious nonsense with an indifferent face. Sheng Xiu felt that he was surrounded by emotions. He never thought that his heart could be soft to this point. If I am not the emperor, will you still want me? Wei Wei Bai was drunk, but her eyes were as pure as the starry sky. You are stupid. I love Xiao Jiang, not the emperor. No, 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 even if you are a beggar, I will run to be your beggar woman. Sheng Xiu's voice trembled slightly. Even if I just use you. Wei Wei Bai tilted her head and seemed to not understand what he was saying. Use me? She thought for a moment and finally patted her head with her hand. I am stupid. I don't know what you are talking about, but it's okay. After you use me, don't throw me away, okay? Wei Wei Bai was like a child, her expression sad, because I don't know if I can find you again next time. Sheng Xiu closed his eyes and the tears in his eyes fell to the ground. You are so stupid. Bai Wei Wei giggled. I'm not stupid. I know that the Chen Fei is a bad woman. I know that there are many bad people around you. I also know that you are working hard. Sheng Xiu opened his eyes and saw Wei Wei Bai's worried expression. He gently touched her hair. Don't be afraid, those bad people, I will beat them away. Wei Wei Bai immediately became confident. Of course, you are the best, no one can beat you. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 95. System, what should I do when the drunk host is more terrible than usual? His favorability was soaring like he had been injected with a cow's blood. Drunk, Wei Wei Bai's childishly, she grabbed Xiu and muttered some nonsense words. Sheng Xiu was very patiently with her. When the moon fell and the sky was about to brighten, Sheng Xiu hugged her and put her back on the bed. He laid down as well and hugged her to sleep. Wei Wei Bai Wei Wei Bai, Wei Wei Bai's Wei Wei. Wei 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 Wei. He knew that there wouldn't be a woman in this world who was so adorable. She was so stupid that even if she was used by him, she still refused to give up loving him. She was so stupid, how could he throw her away? He was reluctant and unwilling to part with her. Sheng Xiu didn't sleep all night looking at Wei Wei Bai. When it was bright, he let someone come in to serve her. But he didn't let anyone wake her up. When Su De helped him put on his clothes, he said respectfully, "The Su family is here." Sheng Xiu knew that the Chen Fei was in prison, so the Su family would definitely come. His expression didn't change. If they come, then they will come. The plan will be carried out according to the original plan. /T. Chapter 82. The head eunuch was stunned. He thought that Sheng Xiu couldn't bear to sacrifice Wei Wei Bai, but he still followed the original plan. Sheng Xiu then said, "First solve the 4 great families, then I can face the rest of the forces, and even the outsiders." When the head eunuch heard this was not right. After solving the 4 great families, wouldn't Wei Wei Bai be pushed out as a scapegoat? Once Wei Wei Bai died, others would have no excuse to rebel. It was even more impossible for outsiders to attack. Sheng Xiu looked at the bed. He wrapped her tightly. Because she was drunk, he didn't know when she would wake up. When he saw her, he knew how the ancient emperors felt when they became incapable rulers who couldn't distinguish right from wrong for their women. If it was him, so what if he was scolded by the world for being incapable? As long as she was by his side, he could bear anything. Between the country and her, he finally chose her. Yes, in the end, the sacrifice is not her, but me. After killing the 4 great families, he would not sacrifice Wei Wei Bai. At that time, everyone in the world would scold him, and he could bear it. He could bear to lose the respect and love of everyone in the world. But he couldn't sacrifice the heart of a silly woman who loved him. The head eunuch's fingers trembled, and he understood their predicament. He sighed twice, as if he was a few years older. Well, this old slave's cheap life is nothing, but I am willing to accompany the emperor. Shang Xiu put on his dragon robe, flicked his sleeves, and coldly said, "Well, let them get ready, I will rush out and kill the Su family." After Shang Xiu left for a long time, Wei Wei Bai climbed out of the bed with a headache. "What happened last night? Why do I feel like my head is a watermelon? It hurts so much. People who don't drink are always particularly painful when they wake up drunk." The system chuckled. Wei Wei Bai had goosebumps. "Are you thinking of love? Why are you laughing so lewdly?" The system almost choked itself to death. Why didn't the host ever say anything nice? The system was expressionless. "Oh, I don't know what kind of cheat you did last night, but your favorability rating was raised to 95. Wei Wei Bai was stunned. Her favorability was at 95. She rubbed her temples and said with a headache, "Last night, I seem to have been dreaming. I dreamt of Journey to the West, where Joker stepped on the clouds to pick up Xixia Fairy. After that, I can't remember anything." System, no wonder you started talking about the peerless hero and the clouds. She said, "Show me the replay." The system showed her the replay. After reading it, Wei Wei Bai remained silent for a long time. Finally, she lay back on the bed and sighed. It seems that Shang Xiu wants to kill the other 3 families, and then bear the consequences of being an incapable ruler by himself. She looked at the top of the bed with some annoyance. She didn't know what she was entangled with. After thinking for a while, she said, "He can't be like this. He is a wise ruler. If he really takes all the blame, he may not be able to keep the throne in the end." The system was suddenly moved. The love between the emperor and the concubine was simply moving. Then the system heard Wei Wei Bai say worriedly, "If he can't be the emperor, won't my side task be over? My everlasting youth reward?" The system was moved. Screw the love between the emperor and the concubine, it didn't believe in love anymore. Button the Chapter 83. When the Su family was exterminated, Wei Wei Bai was eating melons. She knew that Shang Xiu moved quickly, but she didn't expect that he would destroy people so simply and violently. The Su family also didn't expect that Shang Xiu would raise the butcher's knife without any scruples. She heard that the Su family had someone leading the army outside, and as a result, the people under them rebelled at the same time, and immediately eradicated the Su family's power in the army. Wei Wei Bai listened to the melons and dropped them. Was this the ability of the male lead? When she was the leader of the company, she fought with the old men in the company for a long time. Although she won in the end, she had a heart attack several times. If Shang Xiu went back to her company to be the CEO or something, it was estimated that he could lead her company to the first position in the world. It was said that the Chen Fei couldn't even be a concubine, and followed her father to the guillotine. It was estimated that it was all over by now. The Liang family and the Wu family were trembling with fear, and were contacting their own forces, intending to rebel. 2 of the 4 great clans had been wiped out, but there were still many remaining forces that hadn't been wiped out. These forces had also joined in the mighty rebellion. Shang Xiu didn't say a word to her, and he didn't allow anyone to say it to her. But he couldn't prevent her from having a gossipy system. The system was still chattering away, gesticulating with joy. The rebel forces have already pulled out a carp in the river, and the carp's belly hid a brocade book. The book said that the Shang Jun was cruel and heartless, and the heavens will send down the wrath of the heavens. Therefore, the rebel forces have named themselves Heaven's Wrath. This Heaven's Wrath army has begun to resist the Imperial army, and will soon enter the city. They will hang you and Shang Xiu, this pair of dogman and dogwoman. Then, they will use iron knives to treat you like Peking duck, and cut you into pieces to serve as wine and dishes. Wei Wei Bai suddenly lost her appetite, and the melon in her hand couldn't eat anymore. Dogman, dogwoman, Peking duck. She put down the melon in her hand, and just wiped her hands. She saw that Shang Xiu had already walked to the door, standing in the place where the light and shadow intertwined, staring at her. Wei Wei Bai was a little embarrassed as she looked at the muskmelon skin on the table and the crumbs of snacks on the floor. She reached out and moved the melon peel a little further away, pretending that she hadn't eaten that much. Then, she happily went up to him. "Your Majesty." Wei Wei Bai bowed. Sheng Xiu grabbed her hand. "How can you eat so much cold melon? What if you have a stomachache?" After he finished speaking, he looked at Hong Xiu and Lu Lei. "Don't do it again. If something happens to your master, you don't have to serve her anymore." The female eunuchs in the room immediately knelt down and begged for forgiveness. Wei Wei Bai's mouth twitched. She really couldn't adapt to this evil feudal society. After Sheng Xiu let people pack up everything, he took her hand and sat down on the chair. He smiled and said, "Je ne let Suda prepare. After a while, when everything is ready, we can hold your coronation ceremony." Wei Wei Bai was shocked. Seal what?" Sheng Xiu saw her surprised look, his smile faded a bit, but his eyes were still hot. "I want to marry you." The word marry was used on the legal wife. In the royal family, only the empress could use the word marry. From promise to Zhao Yi to Huang Gui Fei and then to the empress. This time was almost as fast as the speed of light. Wei Wei Bai bowed her head, and her fingers couldn't help but pinch her sleeves. Sheng Xiu's eyes darkened. "What, you don't want to?" Wei Wei Bai shook her head. When she looked up again, her eyes were red. She sniffled. Chen Xie was just moved. Chen Xie didn't expect to hear the emperor say this one day. Teether. Chapter 84. Sheng Xiu reached out and wiped the tears on her face. "Now you heard it, Zhen. No, I want to marry you." Sheng Xiu wants to marry Wei Wei Bai. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 97. Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes trembled, and there was a trace of complex emotions in her eyes. Finally, she showed a relieved and beautiful smile. "I also want to marry you." Wei Wei Bai wants to marry Sheng Xiu. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 98. The two people looked at each other and smiled, sweet and warm. The head eunuch stood outside, and the old tears in his eyes almost rolled down. The rebel forces were getting more and more powerful. Sheng Xiu often studied military intelligence all night. The Liang family and the Wu family were almost destroyed because of their misjudgment and Sheng Xiu's strong suppression. But the four great families were destroyed. Sheng Xiu didn't give an explanation, which made many old ministers feel cold. As for the rest of the local forces, some had already used this as an excuse to rebel. Some people had already written a crusade against Sheng Xiu, describing him as a tyrant who was muddle-headed for a woman. However, Sheng Xiu stubbornly ignored the pressure of the various forces and continued to kill the remaining forces of the four great families. As for the coronation ceremony, it was almost ready. After Sheng Xiu checked all kinds of things that needed to appear tomorrow, he told the palace people some things that needed to be paid attention to. When everything was ready, he walked out of the hall with a sigh of relief. He looked at the stars in the sky. Outside the city gate, various forces had already gathered. Many old ministers who were bitterly disappointed also came to the palace gate overnight, saying that they wanted to seek an explanation for the four great families. Because he wanted to be the empress, he angered everyone. Wei Wei Bai's reputation as an enchantress could no longer be suppressed. He suddenly changed from a wise ruler to a fatuous one. Everyone felt that it must be because of Wei Wei Bai's bewitchment. If he insisted on marrying her, then those forces would collectively rebel. Sheng Xiu walked to his residence and saw Wei Wei Bai with her head down embroidering something. He looked at it from a distance. Wasn't that the Flower Fairy Festival mythological beast that she said she would embroider for him? Her embroidery skills were not good enough. She had been embroidering a sachet for so long, yet she still hadn't finished it. Sheng Xiu looked at her sideways. Under the light, her beauty was clearly visible. His mood immediately relaxed. How could the betrayal of the world compare to the smile of this woman in front of him? Wei Wei Bai yawned and looked up to see Sheng Xiu standing next to her. She was scared to death. Wei Wei Bai, Siwei, why didn't you remind me? The system was silent for a while, then said in a strange tone, didn't I just go to take a shower? What whole body care, exfoliation, scrubbing and washing, and finally skincare? I'm very busy, don't call me for such small things. Wei Wei Bai, did she offend the system again? Sheng Xiu saw Wei Wei Bai and hid the embroidered bandage in his hand behind him. He pretended not to see it. After all, Wei Wei Bai may want to give him a surprise. Wei Wei Bai smiled awkwardly and said, Your Majesty, are you done with your work? Her hands were simply itchy and wanted to practice her cross-stitch kung fu. As a result, Doraemon's embroidery was too eye-catching. She really wanted to throw this thing into the trash can. Sheng Xiu's voice softened a lot. I'm done with my work. Your clothes have been sent over. Do you want to try them on? Bai Weiwei thought of the Empress's outfit. So many jins, just the headdress alone could bend her neck. Fast tea the fast. Chapter 85. She quickly shook her head. I'll wear it tomorrow. Sheng Xiu nodded and found that it was already late at night, so he asked someone to send some sweet soup that Wei Wei Bai liked. He was worried that she would be hungry and wouldn't be able to hold on tomorrow. Wei Wei Bai felt that although Sheng Xiu was very difficult to capture at the beginning, after capturing him, she found that he turned out to be a big warm man. The two people chatted while eating. Sheng Xiu was a person with rich experience. He knew a little about everything and had been to many places. So when they talked, it was particularly interesting and fun. Usually, he was the emperor and was used to being serious, so no one dared to talk to him like this. She didn't know how to talk about the time when he led the army into the palace. Sheng Xiu's voice also became hoarse. At that time, the crown prince killed the previous emperor himself, and the second prince was also betrayed and stabbed to death by his own people, and my imperial concubine mother also. Speaking of this, Sheng Xiu suddenly felt sad and couldn't continue. People in the world thought that he was cruel and merciless, killing his own family and ascending to the throne. But who knew that he didn't intend to be the emperor from the beginning? Wei Wei Bai's expression also became heavy. At this time, she knew that any comfort was useless, because Sheng Xiu only needed to pour out his heart. Sheng Xiu reluctantly smiled. I was the emperor at that time. I also thought that one day I could take revenge. At that time, I had been leading the army outside, so I saw too many people suffering. At that time, I thought that if I were the emperor, I would not let the people suffer so much. Wei Wei Bai secretly sighed. He is indeed a good emperor. She reached out, held his hand, and said seriously, You are a good emperor, really. Sheng Xiu's mood was a bit depressed. When he heard her comfort, he couldn't help but say, I would rather not be the emperor. In this way, he could take her away from here without being condemned by the whole world. The sky was already bright, and unknowingly, they had been sitting all night. Wei Wei Bai was very calm as she let people bring tea and then handed it to Sheng Xiu. We are going to get married later, drink some tea to wake up your spirit. Sheng Xiu didn't think much and was just about to drink. However, Wei Wei Bai had already hooked her arm around his. Her smile was bright and sly. Let's drink cross-cupped tea. Sheng Xiu was stunned and couldn't help but smile. Then he followed her movements and somewhat laboriously completed the action of drinking tea. Not long after he finished drinking, Sheng Xiu suddenly felt numb and fell down. This medicine was similar to an anesthetic. It would prevent the person from losing consciousness, but they would also be unable to move. Wei Wei Bai looked at Sheng Xiu in disbelief. Her smile didn't change, but her expression was a little more sorrowful. Someone come, help the emperor change his clothes. Suda came over and dressed him under Sheng Xiu's angry eyes. When Wei Wei Bai saw that his toggle and loop button was not fastened properly, she bent down and gently helped him fasten it. After that, Wei Wei Bai said to Suda, Let's go. Sheng Xiu looked at them silently. Suda betrayed him? Where is Wei Wei Bai? What were they going to do? Sheng Xiu's mood at this moment was terrible. Soon, Sheng Xiu was carried to the dragon throne. Then he was carried to the palace gate and put down. This place was very high, enough to see the ministers kneeling below. The ministers below had good eyesight and saw Sheng Xiu sitting on it. Everyone shouted long live, and then fiercely begged the emperor to give them an explanation. Collection below to record this reading record. Chapter 86. The head eunuch stood respectfully beside Shang Xiyu. Looking from afar, it was as if Shang Xiyu was sitting straight, cold, and without any expression. And Wei Wei Bai was standing below. The drug was given by the head eunuch, but the plan was thought by her. She drugged Shang Xiyu, and then in his name, killed her, and this matter was over. Anyway, the 4 great clans were destroyed by Shang Xiyu. Others had no reason to rebel, and the ministers also had a way out. Shang Xiyu was also a wise ruler. And she could also go back. What a beautiful ending. Although she did a lot of mental preparation, when she saw the executioner above, she couldn't help but feel scared. System, it really doesn't hurt, right? System, it doesn't hurt, it doesn't hurt. I will help you block the pain for a while, free of charge, no credit. Wei Wei Bai was moved. You are so kind. System, I am really fed up with you making mischief in this plane, holding your beautiful face every day and feeling sorry for yourself. I am afraid that if I look at it for too long, my brain will be damaged, so can you quickly finish the strategy and let's get out of here? Destroying its beautiful imagination of love, it turned from a fan to an anti-fan. Wei Wei Bai, she took a deep breath, kicked off the shoes on her feet, and then let the people next to her tie a rope to her, and let people mess up her hair. When her image was miserable enough, she was pushed to the wall and knelt in front of Shang Xiyu. When Shang Xiyu saw her like this, his eyes immediately turned red. He looked at her angrily, desperately trying to move, but he couldn't move at all. The head eunuch had already held a fake imperial edict and loudly announced to the kneeling Wei Wei Bai, bitch Bai Shi, poisonous and jealous, confused my heart, stirred up the harem, used a treacherous plot to kill the imperial concubine, forged an imperial edict to destroy the Su, Chen, Liang, Wu, 4 families. A pile of evidence said nothing more than that the 4 great clans were all killed by Wei Wei Bai. And Shang Xiyu didn't find out because Wei Wei Bai poisoned him, making him often lose his mind and listen to her words. The reason was really nonsense. But all he needed was a reason. After Suda finished reading, his hands were shaking. He looked deeply at Wei Wei Bai, and in the end, his voice was almost choked with sobs. Madam Bai has committed a heinous crime. She is to be sentenced to death. Shang Xiyu struggled desperately. When he heard that he was going to die, he was stunned. Wei Wei Bai smiled at him and said in a low voice, Your Majesty, this concubine has 3 wishes in this life. The first is that this country will always be prosperous, that barbarians will never invade, and that people from all sides will come to congratulate. Secondly, I hope that Your Majesty will be safe and worry-free, that everything will go smoothly, and that you will live a long life. The 3 wishes were to hold your hand and grow old with you. When my hair is white, you will still be by my side. These words were like 10,000 arrows piercing through his heart. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 100. Wei Wei Bai heaved a sigh of relief. Then, she saw her head fly up. She didn't feel any pain at all. Shang Xiyu didn't know how long he had been sitting there. The effect of the drug had passed, but he didn't move. He still maintained his sitting posture. The minister left after receiving a satisfactory answer. The rebel forces outside the city had no reason to rebel, so they could only leave. Everything fell to the ground. Only Shang Xiyu was left sitting on the dragon throne. There was also the blood on the ground and Wei Wei Bai's body. Suda had already knelt down and kowtowed to the ground. This was the imperial concubine's idea. This old slave also agreed. This old slave knows that his crime is unforgivable, but I don't regret it. He was the same as Wei Wei Bai. They both knew that Shang Xiyu was a rare good emperor. So Wei Wei Bai would rather destroy herself to protect him. Shang Xiyu didn't say anything. He just stared blankly in front of him. Suddenly, he stood up and said, Zhen and Wei Wei are going to get married today. It's time to change clothes. Suda burst into tears. Your Majesty, the imperial concubine is going. The download address is at https://www.soshu.com. Collect button below to record the reading record of this time, Chapter 86, Emperor 40. Chapter 87. Shang Xiyu acted as if he didn't hear it. His eyes were empty as he walked forward. Suddenly, his feet were wet. He looked down and saw blood all over the ground. He was too familiar with this kind of thing. From birth to the present, he had accompanied a bloody life. Why was there blood? The head eunuch followed him all the way. Your Majesty, wake up, the imperial concubine is gone. Shang Xiyu's expression was stiff, his eyes were dull, and he repeated, gone? He seemed to be unable to understand what this sentence meant. Gone? Where did she go? Today is our wedding day. Didn't you see? Everything is ready. I personally watched Wei Wei's clothes embroidered by the palace servants. She will definitely look good wearing them. Shang Xiyu showed a fleeting smile and repeated foolishly, she will definitely look good. The head eunuch burst into tears, it's all this old slave's fault. This old slave deserves to die. Please, Your Majesty, grant me death. Shang Xiyu suddenly became furious. He kicked the head eunuch out. What death? Today is such a good day. Who dares to say these inauspicious words? Jin will cut off your head. The head eunuch was kicked until he vomited blood and fell to the ground. He looked at Shang Xiyu. A person who was so sad to the point of despair was actually escaping, as if Wei Wei Bai was not dead. Shang Xiyu took a few steps and suddenly staggered. He fell to the ground. The ground was full of blood, and he couldn't walk anymore. Wei Wei Bai's head fell into a pool of blood not far away. Her expression didn't show any trace of pain. It was serene and quiet, as if she was sleeping. Shang Xiyu was almost as stiff as a stone, so he looked at her dead head stupidly. He suddenly laughed twice. Wei Wei, the ground is cold. Why are you lying on the ground? Jin will help you up. He trembled as he held her head. Why is it so cold? Jin will warm you up. Warm up. Shang Xiyu hysterically held her head in his arms, untied his clothes, and wrapped her, as if this could bring back the delicate warmth on her face. But it was too cold, she was too cold. He couldn't warm her heart. He had killed her. Shang Xiyu's face was completely bloodless. He looked miserably at the blood on the ground. Looking at Wei Wei Bai's body, he knelt like this, his whole person was in despair. A sharp pain struck him without warning. The heart-wrenching pain caused him to completely collapse. He was like a lone wolf that had lost its mate. His body went limp as if his spine had been broken. He laughed with tears streaming down his face, and blood seeped out from between his tightly clenched teeth. It was so tragic that even his body was dying. Ha ha, without you, what is the use of this country? The first time he saw her, she was standing in the pool and stealing glances at him. As her eyes wandered, it was as if all the beauties in the world were not even half as beautiful as her. It turned out that he was already moved by that one glance. Ding. Strategy successful. You have received 1 compassion point. Please choose your wish. Wei Wei Bai and the system had already walked far away, and they didn't see Shang Xiyu's subsequent reaction. When she heard the system's reminder, she immediately said, lifespan. Her life now was simply a race against time. Your lifespan is extended by 1 month. Does the host choose to wake up immediately? Wei Wei Bai did not hesitate to nod and agree, yes. Ding. The host's wish has been fulfilled. Wei Wei Bai immediately entered the familiar darkness, it was quiet and comfortable. Teether. Chapter 88. The torrential rain poured down, hitting the wide floor-to-ceiling window. In a huge dark room, on a simple bed, a man suddenly woke up, his whole body trembling violently. The pain made his face pale. Suddenly blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth, and his heart felt like it was being torn apart. He reached out and pinched his chest, enduring the pain. He clapped his hands, and the voice-controlled lights lit up. The decoration design of the huge room was extremely simple and cold, with a sense of high gloominess. Sitting on the bed, Yi Yuxuan's face was still pale. He frowned, and his handsome face had a deep murderous aura in the shadows. That dream, he couldn't remember the woman's name and appearance. But he was like the emperor in the dream, experiencing the most romantic love in the world with her, and at the same time completely losing her. Was this the feeling of heartache? Yi Yuxuan looked at the blood on his hand with some puzzlement. He touched his mouth. When the pain was at its peak, he actually vomited blood. It seemed that his body really had a problem. He called Qin Xiu, Uncle Qin, come and check me with the equipment, I just vomited blood. His tone was very flat, as if he was explaining official business. Qin Xiu had just done a major operation, and was about to rest when he received a call from Yi Yuxuan. He immediately woke up. Who was Yi Yuxuan? To let him call the doctor and say that he vomited blood, it was estimated that his internal organs were broken. He immediately packed up the equipment and rushed to Yi Yuxuan's house with his assistant, and then rushed to Yi Yuxuan's room. What happened? You vomited blood. Qin Xiu thought that when he opened the door, he would see Yi Yuxuan dying. As a result, Yi Yuxuan was wearing casual clothes, watching a video with no expression. Qin Xiu was not interested in what video he was watching, because Yi Yuxuan's brain was in addition to work, and the things he was watching must be related to work, so it was boring. He looked around. You vomited blood. Where's the blood? Yi Yuxuan coldly said, not after bathing. Qin Xiu was anxious. No, what kind of injury did you suffer that made you vomit blood? Car accident, gunshot wound, or atomic bomb attack? Yi Yuxuan couldn't even be bothered to look at him. You vomited blood after having a dream. Qin Xiu said, another dream? Yi Yuxuan finally had a trace of expression on his face. It was a kind of feeling like his heart was dead. I dreamt of it. That man created a prosperous dynasty, but he committed suicide. The follow-up of the emperor is above, the concubine is below. The emperor had been on the throne for more than 10 years, and the dynasty was thriving. Today was the flower festival, and there were drawings of divine beasts guarding the flower festival everywhere. The divine beast had a white face, a blue head, and no fingers. It looked very cute, and others called it Blue Fatty. It was said that the Flower Fairy Festival originally did not have a divine beast, but the late empress had designed this divine beast. It was said that it was to protect love. Today was also the day when the emperor swept away the foreign tribes and returned in triumph. After the empress died, the emperor, to clear her name, worked hard to wipe out all the remaining rebel forces in the country. He boldly appointed new officials, swept away the decadent atmosphere of the previous dynasty, and led the dynasty on the road to prosperity. Then he issued an imperial edict, saying that the 4 great families were rebel forces, and that the empress sacrificed herself to protect the emperor. The name of the treacherous concubine was swept away. Only the name of the virtuous was passed down through the ages. Just as the outside world was celebrating because of the victory of the war and the Flower Fairy Festival, their emperor came to his tomb alone with wine. Chapter 89. The mausoleum was built from the beginning so that the empress and the emperor could be buried together. Sheng Xiu carried the wine and opened the secret passage of the mausoleum. His figure was still tall and straight, and time did not leave any traces on his face, but his hair was already white. He couldn't wait to enter the tomb in the middle of the mausoleum, where there was a huge sarcophagus. Lying inside was the skeleton of Wei Wei Bai. Sheng Xiu walked to the sarcophagus and couldn't help but reach out and gently touch the sarcophagus, as if he was stroking his favorite woman. He smiled softly and said, I'm here, Wei Wei. He was very familiar with this place as he often came here. Today is the flower festival. Do you remember that year when we went out of the palace to celebrate the flower festival together? You said that you wanted this country to become prosperous, and I helped you achieve it. The foreigners have been defeated and driven away, and they will not be able to come back for decades. I have also opened the channel to select honest officials, and the court is clear. All that should be done, I have done, and this country has gone in the best direction. I have also chosen the best successor, not my child. I have disbanded the harem, and there is no woman. That child has enough ability and enough thought to govern a country well. I have written the edict to abdicate, and he will see it tomorrow morning. Sheng Xiu poured the wine and then whispered, from today onwards, I am not the emperor, and I can go to you. I can't let you come to me every time, and I don't know if you are waiting for me at the Naihe Bridge, or if you have already been reincarnated. He slowly drank the wine, and after a while, the poisonous wine took effect. He opened the sarcophagus and saw the skeleton inside wearing the empress clothes. He couldn't help but laugh. Then he lay down, reached out to hold her hand, and closed the sarcophagus with internal force. No matter where you go, I can always find you. Qin Qiu was speechless for a long time. So you vomited blood? Yi Yuxuan watched the video seriously and nodded lazily. He vomited blood, but it's just a mouthful of blood. Other than the pain in his heart, there's nothing else wrong with him. Qin Qiu took the examination instrument. It's better to check it. After all, vomiting blood must be because there is something wrong with the body. Yi Yuxuan paused the video and then walked over to the sofa and lay down. Qin Qiu and his assistant gave him a basic physical examination very seriously and found that there was indeed no major problem. If you still want to vomit blood, remember to go to the hospital tomorrow. I'll give you a full body checkup. At home, many of the more in-depth examinations could not be done. Yi Yuxuan sat in front of his laptop again. The light from the laptop screen shone on his face, giving him a gloomy and oppressive feeling. Qin Qiu sat opposite him and earnestly advised, "Don't take your body lightly. You know, many serious illnesses have signs." Yi Yuxuan seemed to be thinking about something. He suddenly asked, "Does losing make people feel very painful?" Qin Qiu, lost? Yi Yuxuan nodded seriously. Qin Qiu touched his chin and said, "It depends on what you lose. I don't feel any heartache at all when I lose a piece of garbage. But if I lose my full set of custom-made scalpels, I guess I'll feel heartache until I hit my head." Yi Yuxuan himself lacked happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. He also lacked emotional perception. So although he has been working feverishly, it was not because he liked it. Chapter 90. But because he was like a robot, the program was set from the beginning, and he just followed the program. If his huge business empire was destroyed in an instant, Yi Yuxuan probably would not feel pain. Because he didn't even know what pain was. But he just asked, would it be painful to lose? After Yi Yuxuan listened, he looked at Qin Qiu and said, "I also feel heartache, is it because of loss?" Qin Qiu did not respond for a while. "What did you lose?" When he finished asking, he suddenly sobered up. "The woman in your dream?" Yi Yuxuan's still eyes showed a trace of doubt. "She made me feel like I am alive like you." Yi Yuxuan was abnormal since childhood. He lived like he was separated by a glass. Looking at the people outside the glass, he was completely unable to feel other people's laughter. But in his dream, he really felt it. Qin Qiu suddenly felt a little strange. "The woman in your last dream and this dream, are they the same?" Yi Yuxuan nodded without hesitation. "Although I can't remember the face and the name, they are the same person." Qin Qiu looked at Yi Yuxuan with a strange look. Yi Yuxuan did not respond, letting him look at him. Suddenly Qin Qiu clapped his hands. "I think your time is up because you have these dreams recently." Yi Yuxuan said indifferently, "Time?" Qin Qiu laughed twice. "It's the time of spring. Look at you, you're so old, you haven't even held a woman's hand. I think you've been holding it in for too long and want to vent." Yi Yuxuan said lightly, "I don't need to vent." His desire in this regard was frighteningly faint, like it was dormant. Qin Qiu's face was wretched. "All men want it. Don't you have a fiancé? Although you haven't met more than 10 times, you'll know after you get married." Yi Yuxuan was expressionless. "Fiancé? Oh, you mean that woman who's about to die?" "Qin Qiu, what do you mean dead?" "It was just a heart attack. The hospital rescued her. I looked at the medical record. When she wakes up, she will still be alive." Yi Yuxuan's tone did not change. "She'll probably die tonight. Someone injected her with a highly toxic liquid. She won't live for more than an hour." After saying that, Yi Yuxuan looked at the clock. At this time, the poison should have already taken effect. "We can't save him." Qin Qiu was stunned. "What the hell? Someone is trying to hurt your fiancé and you didn't stop them when you knew?" Yi Yuxuan's eyes were cold. "If he dies, we'll find another one. There are too many of these substitutes." He had chosen Wei Wei Bai because this woman's status and family background were just right. He had chosen her randomly from hundreds of introductions. If she dies, he can just choose another one. Qin Qiu's finger trembled as he pointed at Yi Yuxuan. He wanted to say something several times, but looking at Yi Yuxuan's stubborn demeanor, he knew that it was useless to say anything. Finally, he held his head in his hands and howled, "Damn it, call the hospital. Protect Wei Wei Bai." The assistant immediately went to make the call. Qin Qiu held the medical kit in his hand and gave Yi Yuxuan the middle finger. Then he turned around and ran out. No matter what, she was Yi Yuxuan's fiancée. How could she be killed like this? When Wei Wei Bai woke up, she was not surprised to see that she was still lying in the hospital bed. Download Tether. Chapter 91. It was raining heavily outside, and the thunder was rumbling. It was late at night, and there was no one in the ward. The nurses had all disappeared. Wei Wei Bai instinctively felt that something was amiss. Because of her status, there would definitely be nurses around her in shifts even if it was late at night. "System, I smell a conspiracy." The system asked, "Are you a dog?" Wei Wei Bai was speechless. Wei Wei Bai decided not to think too much. She should contact her father first and chase Bai Yaro Yaro out. She got off the bed and pulled out the drip on her wrist. Black blood seeped out from under her skin. Wei Wei Bai was stunned. Black. The system was silent as well. It sighed. "Look at you. Your heart is too black. Even your blood is stained black. In the future, you need to have a conscience. Don't think about how to cheat others. You need to be sincere." Wei Wei Bai's expression turned ugly. "Damn you. I've been poisoned." The system flipped through its collection and looked at the host's data. "Fuck. Host, you're about to die. No, you're already dead. The poison has already taken effect. You can't be more dead." Wei Wei Bai realized that her vision was turning black. The world was spinning, and she couldn't even stand properly. The system said, "If it weren't for the 1-month lifespan reward, you would have been dead long ago. However, it's about time now. Your 1-month lifespan is quickly draining away to replenish your body." Wei Wei Bai breathed heavily. She was starting to feel suffocated. "I'm going to die." The system said, 1 month is enough to expel the poison, but you have to continue completing missions to save your life. Wei Wei Bai didn't waste any time. "How much time do I have left?" The system said, "Only 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, I will force you into a deep sleep. I also have a free newbie gift package that will give you 3 days of vegetative life." Wei Wei Bai stumbled out. 3 minutes. She didn't even have time to look for a phone call. She still remembered her father's ward. It was impossible for Bai Changyang to be discharged in such a short time. After more than 2 minutes, she finally arrived outside Bai Changyan's ward. In the end, she saw Bai Yaro Yaro opening the door and walking out. This rotten white lotus must be pretending to be filial and coaxing her father to sign his name. Bai Yaro Yaro had just received news that Wei Wei Bai had stopped breathing. Very soon, the nurses would discover Wei Wei Bai's corpse the next morning. Just as she was feeling smug and happy, she opened the door to the ward. Before she could even retract her smug smile, she saw Wei Wei Bai standing outside the door with a pale face and disheveled hair. Rumble. Thunder and lightning flashed. Wei Wei Bai shrieked, "Bai Yaro Yaro, you be *tch." Bai Yaro Yaro was stunned. The cold wind blew in the corridor, and the violent wind howled. Wei Wei Bai was surrounded by a ghostly aura. Was this Bai Wei Wei, who had died tragically, coming for revenge? Bai Yoroiro's heart immediately rose to her throat. She was terrified. "Elder sister, elder sister, elder sister. It wasn't me, it wasn't me. I didn't kill her. Don't come looking for me." The system said, "Elder sister, elder sister, elder sister." Is this woman stuttering? Wei Wei Bai didn't have the time to reminisce with her. She could already hear the countdown to her life. Remaining life countdown, 6 seconds, 5 seconds. Wei Wei Bai reached out and grabbed Bai Yoroiro's neck harshly. "Give me back my life. Give me back my life." Arth. Every time she did a mission, she would be on the brink of death. When she finally managed to survive, she would die the moment she opened her eyes. Who could understand such a feeling? She would go crazy. 3 seconds, 2 seconds. Ding. The newbie gift is unlocked. You will be in a vegetative state for 3 days. Please complete the next mission quickly to save your life. Save her life. Right now, she only wanted to strangle by Yaro Yaro, that black-hearted bee *tch. Die. Ah. Crossover system, Adonis, come here. Crossover system, Adonis, come here and read the full article at https://www.soshu.com. Download Transmigration system, Adonis, come here and read this on your phone, https://m-soshu.com. Chapter 92. You can search Transmigration system, my idol, come to Soshu.com on Baidu to find the. Bai Yaro Yaro thought that she was definitely going to die. Her neck was being strangled by Wei Wei Bai, and her face turned green. Just before she was pinched to the point where her eyes rolled back, Bai Wei Wei suddenly let go of her hand, and her whole body crashed into her, smashing her to the ground. Bai Yaroiro's organs hurt from the pressure. However, this also allowed her to feel the warmth of Wei Wei Bai's body. Was it warm, or was it human? Didn't they say that she was already dead? How could she still be alive? Bai Yaro Yaro was shocked and confused. She immediately pushed Wei Wei Bai away and was about to kick her a few times to vent her anger. In the darkness, Bai Changyan's voice suddenly sounded. Yaro Yaro, what are you doing? Bai Yaro Yaro was shocked. She immediately turned around and saw her father standing by the side. Her expression changed, and she immediately cried, I don't know why elder sister suddenly ran over and wanted to strangle me. Bai Changyang looked at Wei Wei Bai, who was lying on the ground, and his expression changed drastically. He hurriedly pressed the emergency bell and called the doctors and nurses over. Wei Wei Bai was quickly carried away, but Bai Changyan's gaze turned cold as he looked at Bai Yaro Yaro. I think I heard Wei Wei say that she wants you to pay for your life. Bai Yaro Yaro lowered her head, and a sinister look flashed across her eyes. When she raised her head again, her face was filled with confusion. I really don't know. Father, I came to cover you with a blanket, but when I opened the door, I saw elder sister standing outside and trying to strangle me. Look at my bruised neck. I almost died. Bai Changyang snorted coldly. It better be like this. Before your elder sister wakes up, I will ask someone else to take care of the company. You should take care of your family first. Bai Yaro Yaro pinched her palm and pretended to be worried. But the company is so big. How can I rest assured if it's not my own family managing it? Bai Changyang didn't have time to care about her. He was worried about what happened to his eldest daughter. Every time she woke up, she would target Bai Yaro Yaro. He couldn't help but think about it. They are all old employees of the company. They are loyal, so there's no need to worry. Bai Yaro Yaro knew that Bai Changyang would never relent. She looked at the operating theater. Damn it, why did he wake up? Those poisons could kill anyone with a single touch. Why was she the only one who didn't die? Was she really the kind of person who was blessed by the heavens? When Qin Qiu rushed to the hospital, Wei Wei Bai had stabilized, but she was still unconscious. He was still worried, so he personally checked her and found that there was no poison in her body. At first, he thought that no one had poisoned Wei Wei Bai, but after asking around, he found out that someone had indeed swapped the medicine for Wei Wei Bai. However, for some reason, Wei Wei Bai was fine. Qin Qiu was puzzled. He was most afraid of conspiracy. Otherwise, he would not stay in the hospital and not manage the family business. After confirming that Wei Wei Bai was fine, Qin Qiu went to find Yi Yuxuan. Yi Yuxuan had already gone to work. He watched videos on his laptop as he worked. Qin Qiu told Yi Yuxuan about Wei Wei Bai's situation, and Yi Yuxuan did not react. It was normal that there was no reaction. Yi Yuxuan was colder than the North and South Poles combined. But why did he keep watching the video? Could it be the information needed for the meeting? Qin Qiu casually glanced at Yi Yuxuan's laptop, which was playing. Erkang said, Ziwei, I love you so much that my heart hurt. Crepe Myrtle said, if you're in pain, I'm in pain too. You are in pain, but I am in more pain. Qin Qiu. Crossover system, Adonis, come here and read the full article at https://www.soshu.com. com/fast transmigration system, Adonis, come here below to record the reading record. Fast transmigration system, Adonis, come here, comma. Chapter 93. Qin Qiu silently turned his head back and looked at Yi Yuxuan, who was wearing a one-sided headset and holding a folder in one hand, but her eyes were still looking at Princess Pearl. You look at this. Yi Yuxuan nodded coldly, study it. Qin Qiu felt that his voice was floating. Study what? Yi Yuxuan said blankly, love. Look at how other people fall in love, maybe you can know how my dream affects my emotions. Qin Qiu reached out and held his heart. Love. Tilda looking at Princess Pearl studying love. My God, this world is so cold, ruthless and unreasonable. He felt that he must have not woken up yet, it was too shocking. Wei Wei Bai was dizzy and had just opened her eyes when she saw the tablecloth flying. Then there was a crash, the tablecloth and the food on the table all fell to the ground. A magnetic voice, like a violin string, with a very sarcastic tone, said, these things are more suitable for dogs to eat. Wei Wei Bai looked up and saw the man in front of her with a suffocatingly handsome face, looking at her with incomparable boredom. I won't come back tonight, he said in a casual tone, then turned and left. The door was vigorously opened and slammed shut. Wei Wei Bai reached out and rubbed her forehead. I didn't strangle that little bitch just now, I'm so angry. System. Cough. Digest the memory. This task time is also 3 months. Compared to 1 month, 3 months was much more lenient. Wei Wei Bai calmed down and accepted the memory, but she still had the familiar headache. After the headache, she looked at the mess on the ground speechlessly. The system's voice also sounded. The task is to get the love of He Poen, the target is He Poen. Task completion 0. Ding, the male lead's favorability is -15. Wei Wei Bai felt that it was normal for the favorability to be negative. If she was He Poen, it was estimated that it would be -50. Because this time, Bai Weiwei wasn't a stupid person. Instead, it was a matter of forcefully seizing. He Poen had a face that could turn the world upside down, coupled with good acting skills. He was born to mix in the entertainment industry. When he had just entered the entertainment industry, Wei Wei Bai had taken a liking to him. At that time, Wei Wei Bai was a super actress in the entertainment industry. Whether it was connections or resources, she was much better than He Poen. She liked He Poen, so she directly wanted to support him. But He Poen didn't want to. Which man was willing to be a gigolo? In the end, Wei Wei Bai directly cut off his acting career path, leaving him with no shows to film and no work to do. She could torment him however she wanted. He Poen stubbornly refused to agree. Wei Wei Bai's hand was ruthless. She let people set a trap for him and made him sign a super unreasonable contract. He didn't even have the chance to earn money before he was cheated of tens of millions. He Poen's family background was not good. Although his family was not so poor that they couldn't open a nest, they definitely couldn't afford tens of millions. In addition, his parents' health was not good. He Poen was basically supporting the family, so He Poen could only swallow the shame and sell himself to Wei Wei Bai. Wei Wei Bai took him to get the marriage certificate on the same day. However, He Poen made 3 rules. First, she couldn't sleep with him without his consent. Second, the marriage must be hidden and no one could find out that they were married. Third, the contract was only for 5 years. After 5 years, it would be invalid and he would be free. Wei Wei Bai agreed to all of them. Today, there were only 2 months before He Poen's freedom. The download address is at https://www.soshu.com tether. Chapter 94. After Wei Wei Bai read these memories, she only had one feeling. The modern version, the overbearing president fell in love with me. In Wei Wei Bai's view, these 5 years of getting along were basically equivalent to not getting along at all. Because He Poen didn't want to get close to Wei Wei Bai at all, he just wanted to get through the 5 years quickly. So he had been desperately taking on roles. Coupled with the resources given to him by Wei Wei, he had both talent and face, and became popular in an instant. These 5 years were enough to turn Hee Poen into a super actor in the entertainment industry. He had countless fans, countless resources, and even opened his own studio a year ago. He directed and acted in a movie, which grossed billions and won countless awards. Now Hee Poen was no longer under Wei Wei Bai's control. Hee Poen didn't leave because of the contract. It was estimated that after 2 months, he could directly take out tens of millions of yuan and throw the divorce agreement in Wei Wei Bai's face and tell her to get out. System, if I force myself on Hee Poen now, wouldn't it be a typical president's plot? There was a forced contract and a secret marriage agreement. All that was left was to drag her to bed. The system looked up and down at Wei Wei Bai. You force yourself on him? Can you force yourself on him? Wei Wei Bai poured herself a glass of water, took a sip and said, it's been almost 5 years, but the result is that these two people live under the same roof, like a landlord and a tenant who don't need to see each other. Hee Poen's favorability didn't increase at all. It shows. The system couldn't help but ask, what does it show? Wei Wei Bai laughed twice. It shows that the original owner is an idiot in love. She likes a man and wants to snatch him, but this man is acting outside every day and only comes back 10 days a year. How can she bear it? And 10 days a year was because Hee Poen came back to get things and then left in a hurry. Or they would occasionally come back to sleep and lock their doors tightly. Then, they would wake up early and run out again. Anyway, Hee Poen basically ate and lived in the crew. With his current identity, he could receive any kind of drama. It was too easy to avoid Wei Wei Bai. Therefore, after almost 5 years, Hee Poen was able to perfectly avoid Wei Wei Bai. This was simply a talent. Wei Wei Bai paced back and forth a few times and suddenly said, I can't go on like this. If there is no contract, I don't think I can get close to Hee Poen. At that time, Hee Poen might not come to kill her. After all, the original owner had already retired from the entertainment industry. Now Hee Poen was the king of the entertainment industry. Wei Wei Bai opened the wine cabinet and took out all the liquor that was used for decoration. Then, she began to sprinkle the liquor around. Soon, the room was filled with the smell of alcohol. The system covered its nose. Do you want to burn yourself? Just turn on the gas. There's no need to ruin things like this. Wei Wei Bai coldly snorted. Even if I burn myself, I will drag you down with me. Our feelings are so good. How can I bear to let such a beautiful person like you be polluted by the filthy world? System, you are ruthless. After arranging everything, Wei Wei Bai opened the phone records and soon saw Hee Poen's phone number. She first brewed her emotions and then called him. Hee Poen did not answer. She called again, he did not answer. She called again and again and again. After more than a dozen calls, Hee Poen finally answered the phone. Wei Wei Bai, do you know that I am shooting a night scene now? You are so annoying, you keep calling me. T. Chapter 95. On the other side of the phone, Wei Wei Bai was terribly quiet. Hee Poen was very impatient. If you have something to say, I'll give you 10 seconds, or I'll hang up. Suddenly, there was a cry on the other side of the phone. First, it was a humble cry. Then it became more and more uncontrollable. The cry gradually became louder and louder, full of grief and depression. Hee Poen was stunned. Wei Wei Bai? Wei Wei Bai didn't speak, she just kept crying, crying so desperately, so heartbreakingly. It was as if she had encountered the saddest thing in the world. Although Hee Poen hated Wei Wei Bai, he had never seen her cry like this. He frowned. What's wrong with you? If something happens, call the police. What's the use of crying? But Bai Weiwei acted as if she didn't hear him. Instead, she said vaguely, come back, okay? Come back, okay? Hee Poen's face flashed a trace of gloom, and his tone was still impatient. I'm filming, I won't go back tonight. Wei Wei Bai sobbed and said, just come back. She was not normal at all, it was as if she was not sober. Hee Poen wanted to refuse, but the phone was suddenly hung up. What's going on? Hee Poen threw the phone on the table, and then said to the assistant next to him, continue filming. But he didn't know why, even after several takes, he still couldn't calm down. His mind kept replaying Wei Wei Bai's phone call. Why did she cry so desperately? That feeling of despair was really hard to ignore. Even if he hated her, the contract would expire in 2 months. If something happened to her, it would be impossible to terminate the contract. Poen found a reason to go back and see. He took off his costume and threw it to the assistant next to him. "I'm going back, I'll be back soon. Go back and see, it won't take more than an hour." Poen returned to his residence, took out the key to open the door, and smelled a strong smell of alcohol. Wei Bai drank. Didn't she never drink? He heard movement in the living room. Just as he walked over, he heard the sound of the TV on. One of his dramas from last year was playing. On the other hand, Wei Bai was curled up on the sofa with a beer bottle in her hand. Her long hair was in a mess as she watched the television. Her eyes were red and she didn't look as delicate as usual. Instead, she looked particularly embarrassed. "Wei Bai." Poen was a little angry and unbuttoned his collar. His beautiful eyebrows were full of annoyance. "Are you done yet?" Just as he reached the sofa, he paused. This was because Wei Bai's eyes were not focused at all. She was just staring at the TV series. Wei Bai suddenly smiled, and her eyes became pure. "When I met you, it was summer. When you smiled, I felt that all the sunshine in the world fell into my heart." In the TV series, the male lead played by Poen also said this line almost at the same time. Even he had forgotten the lines at that time, but she remembered them clearly. Poen didn't know why, but his breath was suffocating for a second. When she said this sentence, it was particularly beautiful. Wei Bai looked up and seemed to be unable to see the person. She asked strangely, "Who are you?" Poen said in disgust, "Who can I be? If you called me here to see you go crazy, then I won't accompany you." After that, he planned to turn around and leave. As a result, he had just taken 2 steps when he heard Wei Bai call softly, "Poen." She said who he was, but now she called him. He couldn't act well. Teether. Chapter 96. Poen was about to ridicule her, but he heard Wei Bai sigh and say, "He won't come back. Poen won't come back. Won't come back. Then is he dead now?" Poen's heart was filled with anger. He was about to turn around and ridicule her a few times when he heard Wei Bai whisper, "He hates me so much. How could he come back?" Wei Bai held the bottle and leaned her head on the sofa. Her eyes were fragile and confused. "I know he hates me. He hates me very much." Poen breathed heavily. This was the first time he heard Wei Bai say these words. The scene of her forcing him was still vivid in his mind. For him, it was a shame for a lifetime. He thought that this woman was only after his face. After all, he had seen too many women crazy for his face since he was a child. She was always very delicate in front of him. Even if she called him to come back, she would use a very reserved tone. It was as if he was a dog she raised. He was more and more disgusted with coming back, and more disgusted with receiving her calls. Wei Bai didn't seem to notice Poen. She continued to drink, but there was only a small sip left in her bottle. She shook the bottle desperately, but there was nothing left. Wei Bai felt wronged. She slammed the bottle to the ground. "Even you bully me. You all bully me." If it weren't for the wrong scene, Poen would be amused by her cute actions. Wei stood up shakily, and stepped over the shards of the wine bottles with her bare feet. Poen's heart tightened. He frowned and almost didn't think much. He reached out and picked her up. So light. This was the first time Poen held her like this. Her soft body was full of alcohol, but it didn't smell bad. Wei Bai shook her head and seemed to find that she was being held. She immediately became alert and angry. "Who are you? Put me down." Poen's eyes were cold. Wei Bai usually spoke like this, full of a cold feeling. He pursed his lips and suddenly threw her onto the sofa. Then, he grabbed Wei Bai's hand murderously. "Wei Bai, I've tolerated you for long enough. If you're not even willing to put in the effort for these 2 months, then we'll divorce now. Anyway, I'm just a toy that you bought 5 years ago. You should have seen enough after so many years." He was just looking. He would never touch her, nor would he let her touch him. In the 2nd year of their secret marriage, Wei Wei Bai could no longer threaten him. The reason why he stayed behind was because he wanted to remember this lesson as a humiliation. He wanted to warn himself that he would never be trampled on like this again. So for the past 5 years, he treated Wei Wei Bai like air. As long as she didn't bother him, he would turn a blind eye. But today, this woman had crossed the line. He Poen shook off her hand. His delicate and handsome face under the light was cold and grim. He smiled coldly. Our status has long been changed. If you don't want to be killed by me after the divorce, you should be good for me. Wei Wei Bai stared at him and seemed to be afraid. He Poen looked at her contemptuously, then turned and walked away. As a result, he didn't take a few steps when the woman behind him stumbled over. He didn't know what she tripped over, but she bumped into his back. She didn't hit him with much strength, but it angered him. He Poen turned around angrily, his eyes sharp. You better not. A warm kiss blocked his lips. It was filled with the smell of alcohol and passionate affection, which made him completely stunned. To read the https://www.soshu.com to read https://www.soshu.com to text to read https://m-soshu.com. Chapter 97. Wei Wei Bai's eyes were confused. She grabbed his arm with both hands and pressed him against the door. She stood on her tiptoes and raised her head like a graceful and proud swan, desperately chasing after the warmth she wanted. He Poen's nose was full of her breath, the smell of her body, her fierce heartbeat, and her soft body. Everything, all of a sudden, rushed to him. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at -5. He Poen was lost in the smell of this woman for a second, but soon he woke up. He seemed to understand something. Anger rushed to his mind like a violent storm. He pushed Wei Wei Bai away. You've given me enough. Bai Wei Wei was pushed away and fell to the ground, weakly lying on her stomach. He Poen rubbed his lips hard, as if he could wipe away her taste. He said in disgust, "Do you think you can make me sleep with you? Even if all the women in the world are dead, I won't touch you." Wei Wei Bai was still lying motionless. He Poen stared at her. Wei Wei Bai, don't play tricks anymore, don't make me look down on you even more. Wei Wei Bai was very quiet. He Poen realized that something was wrong. He walked over and kicked Wei Wei Bai. Hey, woman, don't pretend to be dead. The system said, fuck, you've been kicked by someone. Wei Wei Bai, who pretended to be unconscious. With this kind of character, how come he hasn't been beaten to death? He Poen squatted down and lifted the long hair covering her face. He found that Wei Wei Bai was frowning and her cheeks were abnormally red. Fever. He looked at her face and knew that her body temperature was abnormal. He Poen immediately took out his and called his assistant, Xiao Mu, give me. His voice suddenly paused because Wei Wei Bai was wearing silk pajamas. When she laid on the ground, half of her fair shoulder was exposed. Her thick black hair was spread all over the ground, and her delicate white skin was suffused with a light pink color, giving people a kind of flirtatious feeling. This kind of Wei Wei Bai was different from the Wei Wei Bai he usually saw. He had never seen such a weak and delicate side of her. Little Mu said, "Brother-in, what's wrong? An hour has passed. The director is asking if we should continue." He Poen hesitated for a few seconds before saying, "Tonight's scene will be filmed tomorrow night. You let them wrap up, I take a break." Xiao Mu didn't think too much about it. He Poen hadn't rested for 2 days and 2 nights. It was only right for him to rest. He immediately agreed. He Poen hung up the phone and his face became even more ugly. He should have thrown her to his assistant. How could he be afraid that she would be taken advantage of? Why did he care if this woman lived or died? He Poen suppressed his anger. There were only 2 months left, so it didn't matter if he endured it. He reached out and picked up Wei Wei Bai. It was the second time he held her, but her weight was still so light that he frowned. But he was angry and couldn't help but say sarcastically, "You're as heavy as a pig." The system immediately complained, "Host, he is insulting you. Wei Wei Bai, today I don't look at me, tomorrow I'll make him look like he can't." He Poen threw her on the bed and reached out to rub her forehead. Her fever didn't subside. He coldly snorted, "It's better if you burn to death." He said so, but he still rummaged through the medicine box, found the fever medicine, and directly stuffed it into Wei Wei Bai's mouth. It was rough and forceful, as if he was dealing with an enemy who killed his father. The download address is at https://www.soshu.com tether. Chapter 98. Of course, Wei Wei Bai couldn't swallow it. She frowned uncomfortably. He Poen was impatient and reached out to pinch her face. "Woman, swallow the medicine." Wei Wei Bai was even more uncomfortable. She suddenly reached out and grabbed something. Her whole body turned sideways and she vomited. He Poen stiffened. The place she grabbed was his lower body, and the place she vomited was his pants. Bai, Wei, Wei. He Poen went crazy. He was a clean freak and almost exploded. After Wei Wei Bai vomited, she felt that her mouth was sticky and disgusting. She grabbed the hem of his shirt and wiped her mouth. Then she rolled back to bed and hugged the quilt to sleep. He Poen trembled with anger and felt that he was going to explode. Between strangling Wei Wei Bai and going to the bathroom, he chose the latter with difficulty. After taking 3 showers, he walked out with a towel wrapped around his waist and opened the closet to search. Where were his clothes? There were only Wei Wei Bai's clothes left in the closet. None of his clothes were there. When he went out just now, his things were still there. He Poen turned around and found that all his things were gone. Not only his clothes, but even his toothbrush, shaver, cup, and other things were gone. He angrily reached out and pulled Wei Wei Bai. "Woman, where are my things?" Bai Wei Wei was in a daze, as if she was disturbed. Her thick eyelashes trembled slightly, and she said vaguely, "Boen?" He Poen didn't have a good temper to greet her. "Where are my things?" Wei Wei Bai looked at him blankly. It seemed that she couldn't distinguish between dream and reality. She suddenly smiled sadly. "I sent them away. I sent them away. Didn't you say you wouldn't come back?" He Poen gritted his teeth. "When did I say I wouldn't come back?" The tears in Wei Wei Bai's eyes condensed, but they refused to fall. "The last time you left me for 97 days, you only came back for 1 night. Last time, you left me for 68 days before you came back to get your things. Last time you left me for 103 days. You just sat at the door and asked your assistant to tell me that you were going to film again." He Poen was stunned and didn't know what to say. Wei Wei Bai stubbornly looked at him with reddened eyes. "If you leave me today, the next time we meet will probably be when we get a divorce." "No, maybe what I saw was only the divorce agreement. I packed up your things first and sent them to Xiao Mu. Did I do something wrong?" He was absolutely right. He Poen really wanted to live with the crew for 2 months, and then send her the divorce agreement when the time was up. Wei Wei Bai suddenly covered her head with the blanket and cried, "Don't disturb me again. Why do I still see you after drinking so much? When I go out, I see your advertisement poster. When I buy something, I see the products you endorse. When I turn on the TV, I see the TV series you starred in. Even now, when I want to sleep, you won't let me go even in my dreams." He Poen's chest tightened and he said, "Do I look that bad? Do you think you're dreaming?" Wei Wei Bai was quiet and forbearing. After a while, he heard her say lightly, "If it's not a dream, how can you say so much to me? You hate me, hate me, hate me." This sentence was filled with pain and resignation. He Poen heard it and felt wronged. He felt wronged for the woman he hated. He was a hot-tempered person. He couldn't stand Wei Wei Bai suddenly becoming like a little wife. Not only did she cry, but she also hid and cried by herself. Why didn't he know before that this woman was so fragile, so disappointing? Ding, the male lead's favorability is 0. The system was dumbfounded. How did the favorability increase? How did it go down to -15? And T. Chapter 99. Wei Wei Bai cried and gradually lost her voice. He Poen hesitated for a while, then walked over to pull her quilt and saw that she had fallen asleep. He shook her angrily. "Woman, wake up." Wei Wei Bai was tired, and she may have brought some negative effects when she came, causing her body to start to have a fever. So now she was in a semi-conscious state and couldn't respond to him. "Drinking when you have a fever, you don't even know when you will die." He Poen coldly snorted. He stood naked and suddenly felt cold. Wasn't there a heater? He reached for the remote control of the air conditioner, but there was no response. The broken air conditioner was broken. It was now late autumn, and the night was particularly cool. He Poen frowned and went out. He came to his room and found that the air conditioner was working. Although his things were taken away, the bedding was still there. He Poen directly lay on the bed in his room. Anyway, he was not cold. As for Wei Wei Bai, it was none of his business. He pulled the quilt and covered his head to sleep. He didn't rest for more than 2 days and he felt tired. But he didn't know why, but he turned over and over, and his mind was full of Wei Wei Bai's miserable crying in front of him tonight. When had he ever seen her so weak and lowly? It was as if her hard shell was broken, leaving only the soft inside. And she had a fever, and there was no heater. He heard that some people would die of a fever. That woman was simply a disaster, she shouldn't die so easily. He Poen turned over for a few minutes, got up grumpily, and then rushed to Wei Wei Bai's room. He found that this woman was not sleeping well. She even kicked the quilt away, and her face was as red as a monkey's butt. This was simply courting death. He Poen reached out and touched her forehead, which was even hotter. Wei Wei Bai was uncomfortably hot, and suddenly felt that her forehead was a little cold. She couldn't help but rub it, like a cat that couldn't wake up. He Poen felt her gentle rubbing against him. Her bangs touched the back of his hand, causing his skin to tremble. He quickly took his hand back and shook it a few times, as if he could get rid of the feeling that Wei Wei Bai gave him. Then, he immediately took out the fever medicine from the medical kit. This time, he had to make her take the medicine no matter what. He poured warm water and stuffed the medicine into her mouth. Then, he reached out to hold her head and fed her water. However, Wei Wei Bai's expression turned ugly as if she was about to vomit again. He Poen didn't know what was wrong with him, but his mind was full of thoughts of making her take the medicine. By the time he realized what he was doing, his lips had already sealed hers, forcefully and roughly forcing her to swallow the pill. Wei Wei Bai had difficulty breathing and quickly swallowed the medicine. As for He Poen, it was as if he was struck by lightning. He maintained the action of kissing her and stiffened for several seconds. Then, he pushed Wei Wei Bai away, his whole body bristling. "Bah bah bah, I'm bewitched." He hurriedly ran to rinse his mouth, and when he finished rinsing, he found that he was holding Wei Wei Bai's cup. He Poen put down the cup in his hand, as if the whole world owed him 8 billion yuan, and returned to Wei Wei Bai's side. "I really want to strangle you." He Poen picked her up with the quilt, and then strode to his room. He stuffed her into his bed, stuffed a pillow in the middle, and lay on the other side. "Just think of it as my good intentions. Anyway, after tomorrow, we will never see each other again." Download. Chapter 100. Tomorrow, he would leave and live directly with the crew. 2 months later, he would send the divorce agreement, and these 5 years of shameful life would be over. Ding, the male lead's favorability has increased by 5. System, it had never seen such a weird and ridiculous way to upgrade favorability. It couldn't understand at all. This angry and irritable male lead, he was obviously so angry that he was about to explode. How could his favorability increase? Or was there a problem with its method of detecting favorability? The system silently started a self-check program to check if it was poisoned. Wei Wei Bai had a fever, but her vigilance was not low. She was used to being sick since childhood, so she could endure a fever. She made sure that He Poen's breathing was steady and he fell asleep, and then she opened her eyes. After taking the fever medicine, people would feel better, and it was not serious. Wei Wei Bai carefully moved her body, pushed the pillow in the middle away, and then drilled into He Poen's arms, putting his hand on her waist. System, Wei Wei Bai sighed to the system. Tong tong, He Poen is a little demon who doesn't care about his mouth, but is very honest. You can't be hard on him. You have to be soft, so he will feel that he is awesome and first. After she read He Poen's information, she knew that this man could be soft but not hard. And her mouth was cheap. The harder she was to be hard on him, the more disgusted he would be. As long as she was a little soft, he would immediately be scared. Once she was scared, the favorability would come. Wei Wei Bai suddenly thought of something. Tong Tong, have I completed the side task of the last plane? The system flipped through the information. Completed. Although the male lead in the last plane was short-lived, he did lay a solid foundation for the dynasty and achieved prosperity. Wei Wei Bai was excited. What about my eternal youth reward? The system's forehead burst with blue veins, gritted its teeth and said, please accept the reward, peak acting. Wei Wei Bai was a little disappointed. There was no eternal youth. After waiting for a while, Wei Wei Bai said, what is the peak acting? Why don't I feel anything at all? The system flipped through the folder again and said very calmly, oh, your acting skills have long surpassed the peak, so the reward is invalid. If the host still wants the reward, please continue to work hard in this plane. Wei Wei Bai, he was obviously praising her, so why was she not happy at all? Wei Wei Bai complained a little before closing her eyes and falling asleep. She was also very tired after such a long time. He Poen's biological clock was very accurate. He opened his eyes at 6 o'clock in the morning. He was a little confused and didn't know where he was. His work as an actor had made him used to flying everywhere, and he was also used to a wandering life. He felt something soft and warm in his arms. He Poen frowned and lowered his head to see Wei Wei Bai leaning against his bare chest, delicate like a boneless flower petal. Before he could push her away, Wei Wei Bai's thick eyelashes fluttered and she opened her misty eyes. He Poen was still naked. And Wei Wei Bai was in his arms. The two people stared at each other for a while. Wei Wei Bai seemed to think of something. She reached out and touched her face, and immediately an expression of horror appeared on her face. She immediately kicked He Poen away and rolled out of bed. He Poen was kicked in the stomach by her, and his face turned white. This kick was like killing him. He was already irritable. Last night, he was tossed around by Wei Wei Bai for half the night. As a result, today, Wei Wei Bai was not grateful, but she was also ungrateful. Chapter 101. He aggressively chased after Wei Wei Bai, vowing to strangle her. As a result, when he opened the door of Wei Wei Bai's room, he saw Wei Wei Bai hurriedly putting on makeup. Foundation, cream, eyebrow pencil. Anyway, the steps were all messed up. The more flustered her face was, the worse it was. What was going on? He Poen was still angry that she didn't know what was good for her and kicked him away. He said in a particularly cold tone, Wei Wei Bai, what are you doing? When Wei Wei Bai heard his voice, the lipstick in her hand trembled. It fell out of her lips and directly to her cheek. When she saw that it was He Poen, she immediately put on a cold face, you're back. This was the usual attitude of Wei Wei Bai towards him. Reserved, cold, and annoying. But today's Wei Wei Bai, He Poen looked at her messy makeup and couldn't help but twitch his mouth. He also noticed that her fingers were shaking, as if she was very nervous. Could it be that Bai Wei Wei was always so nervous when facing him? Obviously, she was such a cold, arrogant, and annoying woman. Suddenly, Wei Wei Bai's eyes changed. She looked down at his body, then blushed. She didn't open her eyes, and her fingers clenched harder. He Poen felt that he was cold. He looked down and saw that he was naked. He calmly walked to Wei Wei Bai's side, pulled the quilt from her bed, and wrapped himself. Wei Wei Bai was stiff and didn't dare to move. She was like a pitiful prey that met a lion. She could only tremble. He Poen noticed this detail and suddenly the shame in his heart dissipated. It turned out that Wei Wei Bai was afraid of him. He glared at Wei Wei Bai. If you're sick, go see a doctor. Don't call me in the middle of the night. You're like a hanged ghost, annoying people. After that, He Poen paid special attention to Wei Wei Bai. He found that after she heard this sentence, the blush on her face disappeared in a flash, leaving only a pale white. He could actually manipulate her emotions at will. He Poen smiled coldly and turned away. There were so many people who liked him, So what did Weiwei Bai count for? If she hadn't suppressed him back then, he wouldn't have hated her so much. He Poen walked to the door and suddenly remembered that he had no clothes. What was he going to wear? He called Xiao Mu. Bring me a set of clothes, a hat, and sunglasses. Xiao Mu immediately agreed, and soon he drove here. When he saw He Poen open the door, his eyes widened. He Poen was not wearing clothes. He was the clearest about He Poen and Weiwei Bai. Although these two people were married for many years, they were not married. Did He Poen suddenly think things through last night? After He Poen took the clothes, he locked Xiao Mu outside, then quickly changed his clothes and put on his sunglasses and hat. When they were about to leave, Weiwei Bai suddenly chased after them from upstairs. She hadn't fully recovered yet. She was on the verge of collapsing as she walked, and when she reached the door, she tripped and fell. He Poen had already gotten in the car. Xiao Mu was a little embarrassed, and Ge? Do you want to go down and take a look? He Poen pursed his lips and frowned. Drive. Why do you care about that woman? He must have been out of his mind to be so soft-hearted towards her last night. Did that woman think that she could climb all over him just because he was nice to her? Dream on. The car sped away. The system and Weiwei Bai were speechless. This was the first time she had seen such an annoying male lead. Weiwei Bai got up from the ground and touched her forehead. Her fever had subsided. She went to eat her fill first, took the medicine again, and then tidied herself up before sitting in front of the computer. She opened all the major forums and began to roll up her sleeves to write hateful post. Breaking news, the movie king is actually a gigolo, already kept by a rich woman, squinting eyes face, system, Prince Charming, come here system, Prince Charming, come here // system, Prince Charming, come here system, Prince Charming, come here system, Prince Charming, come here address. Chapter 102. The content of the post was very detailed. It said that when He Poen was not famous in his early years, to get a good role, he directly slept with a female star in the circle. Although the female star was now in a retired state, at that time, she was a famous movie queen. After He Poen slept with the movie queen was very satisfied with his skills, so she kept him as her mistress. She gave him several important resources and let him soar. He Poen not only lived a life of being kept, but also lived a very luxurious life. He often bought dozens of luxury cars and watches. He also bought several villas. The money was not only earned by his acting, but also by the movie queen level rich woman. After Weiwei Bai finished writing the post, she began to post photos. He Poen's villa, the multimillion watch he wore when he went in and out of celebrity events. There was also the car he drove that cost tens of millions. There were also several photos of Weiwei Bai's neighborhood. In the photo, He Poen was wearing a hat. It was a screenshot from the surveillance. Then Weiwei Bai used a variety of accounts to post it on the internet. She also went on Weibo, opened a small account, and copied the content of the post. He Poen was a hot topic. As long as his name was mentioned, it basically took less than 2 hours to see him on the hot topic. Although there was no specific name, He Poen, coupled with such an ecstatic description, not a fool would know that it was talking about the famous He Poen in the entertainment industry. He Poen's fans were the most fearsome fans in the entertainment industry. Wherever he went, there were corpses everywhere and blood flowed like a river. This post was obviously slandering their Poen, so they rolled up their sleeves and started to tear it. Passerby A. Send the blogger a pot lid, keep it well, no thanks. Poen's #1 fan, my Poen is invincible in the world. The blogger looks like a rat. My Poen needs to be kept as a mistress. What a joke. #2 fan arrived, bitch, slandering without any technical content. If you have the guts to leave your address, I will send you a kitchen knife tomorrow. Fan #3, ha 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 ha, the best joke of the year. Who doesn't know that our Bo works 365 days a year? How can he have time to be kept as a mistress? Even if we say he is kept as a mistress, he is kept by us fans. Bystander, does the blogger need a wholesale pot lid? How about a manhole cover? Antifans, I was wondering how He Poen, that greasy ugly freak, could become a film emperor. It turns out that he was kept by someone. Fan number 4, to the one above, I've been unhappy with your family for a long time and want to tear you apart. You say that I, boundless world beauty, am ugly? If you have the guts, show me your photos and fight. Antifans, what's wrong? Did I touch your sore spot? He Poen is nothing more than a kept man. The fans were enraged. They caught the anti-fans and scolded them. The anti-fans were also angry. They posted ugly photoshopped pictures and groundless rumors to attack. Weiwei Bai's Weibo post went viral. Within a few hours, it reached the top of the search rankings. He Poen was kept by someone. He Poen was an ugly freak. He Poen was a rich woman. He Poen was given money for plastic surgery. Xiaomu also received a call from the public relations department. He carefully walked to He Poen's side. "NGE, people are scolding you on Weibo." He Poen was upset. He looked at the script and said angrily, "I'm so popular. How can no one scold me? Don't bother me with this kind of trivial matter." Xiaomu also felt that this kind of thing was not a big deal, so he didn't say anything. Chapter 103. He Poen found that he couldn't read the script at all. After a while, he went to check his phone, but when he didn't see what he wanted to see, he threw it away. After a while, he repeated this action. Xiaomu asked strangely, "NGE, what's wrong?" He Poen said coldly, "Nothing." He didn't want to admit it at all. He was worried about whether Weiwei Bai had fallen to her death. After all, her body didn't seem to be well. What did it matter to him whether she was well or not? Humph. On the other hand, Weiwei Bai was eating sunflower seeds and reading the comments on Weibo. He Poen was really too popular. He had a lot of fans and haters, and other companies paid even more to slander him. After all, he was so popular, but the key was that he grabbed a lot of resources and didn't rest at all. All the good scenes were taken by him, and others could only drink the soup. So there were a lot of stars who hated him. And He Poen, in addition to the fact that he was a big shot, there was really nothing else to be said. There were no scandals, his work attitude was professional, and he loved his fans. Other companies didn't have a chance to slander him. Now that there was finally a decent piece of black material, it was simply a national celebration. He Poen's fans rolled up their sleeves, picked up knives, set up machine guns, pulled up banners to protect He Poen, and began to slaughter the whole network. Fight haters, fight the army, and fight against the company. Anyway, they had to fight these black materials. No one could say that He Poen was bad. This was the attitude of He Poen's fans. Weiwei Bai saw that her post was suppressed, and she immediately began to rummage through the cabinets to find something. "System, what are you looking for?" Weiwei Bai, selling contract. Weiwei Bai found the contract signed by He Poen. His name was blocked, and some conditions were also blocked. Only He Poen's signature and the tens of millions above it were exposed. This was simply ironclad evidence. Then Weiwei Bai took a photo and uploaded it, and her fingers quickly began to post a new Weibo. The unbearable past of a certain movie king, who sold his body for tens of millions, was shameless and immoral, and even had a group of crazy drama queen fans dancing wildly as soon as the photo was revealed. The fans immediately recognized that it was indeed He Poen's autograph, coupled with the contents of the contract. The fans were completely enraged. The black powder was ignited. He Poen's face was red and black. Xiaomu immediately knew about this. He immediately rushed to He Poen, "NGE, it's not good. Things have been exposed." He Poen absent-mindedly looked at his phone. "What's the matter?" Little Moo showed him his phone and zoomed in on the photo of the contract. He Poen was originally sitting, but after seeing the photo, he immediately stood up. His face was particularly ugly. The contract was in Weiwei Bai's hands. That woman actually dared to reveal their secret marriage. Xiaomu immediately said, "Brother N, everyone on the internet is saying that you're a kept woman. They're saying that you're a gigolo who lives off a woman." Poen's face quickly became gloomy, and his eyes turned red with anger. He laughed twice. "Very good, Weiwei Bai, you're looking for death. After he finished speaking, he immediately ran out and drove all the way to Wei Wei Bai's house. He Poen got out of the car and angrily took out the key to open the door. As a result, he couldn't open it. Wei Wei Bai even changed the door lock. He Poen was even more convinced that Wei Wei Bai had a guilty conscience. He angrily slammed the door. Wei Wei Bai, get out here. As a result, after 10 minutes of slamming, there was no sound from inside. Wei Wei Bai, if you don't open the door, I'll kill you. And Chapter 104. Are you dead? Give me a shout. Wei Wei Bai. He Poen slapped the door until it hurt, but no one opened the door. Did she faint because of poor health? He thought of the way she fell when he left in the morning. His heart suddenly felt anxious, but it was different from anger. Just as He Poen was about to smash the door open, Wei Wei Bai's voice suddenly sounded. Poen. He Poen looked back and saw Wei Wei Bai wearing a white dress and a light blue windbreaker. She was holding a bag of food in her hand and looking at him in surprise. He Poen's anger reached its peak and rushed to Wei Wei Bai. He did not hesitate to slap the food in her hand and then reached out to grab her wrist. Wei Wei Bai, you don't want to live anymore. Wei Wei Bai's eyes were still full of surprise, but seeing him like this, the surprise was covered by coldness. You came here today to say these words. He Poen coldly snorted. I thought your temperament had changed. After 5 years, I still haven't slept with you. Are you in a hurry? You're such a vicious woman. Wei Wei Bai's face turned pale. She sneered. Yes, I spent money to buy you, a bodhisattva who can't be touched or scolded. I've worshipped you for 5 years, but in the end, you're called a poisonous woman. He Poen hated it the most when people talked about this. It was the most shameful thing in his life. He said fiercely, why, do you regret it? Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips, and there seemed to be water floating in her eyes. She didn't open her eyes. I really regret meeting you. He Poen felt like he was stabbed, and the pain made him irritable. He sneered. What, isn't it too bad to see but not eat? I'll let you get your money's worth. Wei Wei Bai was puzzled, but He Poen had already moved aside. Open the door. Wei Wei Bai straightened her body and pretended to be calm as she opened the door. Halfway through, she said, I changed the combination lock. The previous lock required a key, so it was inconvenient. When the door opened, Wei Wei Bai couldn't help whispering, the password is your birthday. He Poxin was teased for a moment, but he was so angry that he didn't realize it. However, the favorable impression points betrayed him. Ding, the male lead's favorability has increased to 10. Wei Wei Bai had just opened the door when she heard He Poen kick the door shut. Before she could turn around, she was pushed to the ground. Wei Wei Bai was shocked. She turned around and saw him against the light, looking at her like a demon. Do you think I have a good temper? Do you know how long I've been telling myself not to kill you? He Poen reached out and unbuttoned his collar and began to undress. His eyes were full of anger. Since you think you've made a loss, I'll let you recoup some of your losses. Wei Wei Bai was a little scared. He Poen, are you crazy? He Poen threw his shirt away directly, his handsome face with a trace of cruel evil. I'm crazy. You're crazy. You actually leaked our original contract. If you were obedient and divorced, I wouldn't have messed with you. Now, I'm going to ruin you and make you suffer. Wei Wei Bai seemed to think of something. She immediately said, what are you talking about? I don't understand. I didn't show anyone the contract. He Poen was fed up with her sophistry. If it wasn't her, who was it? Was it his own sleepwalking? He bent over and pinched Wei Wei Bai's face with his hand, and began to tear her clothes with the other hand. And teether. Chapter 105. Wei Wei Bai finally panicked. What are you doing? He Poen was impatient. Isn't this what you want? When you bought me, wasn't this what you wanted? I'll satisfy you and let you get your money back. You should be happy. Wei Wei Bai struggled. I don't want to get my money back. He Poen, get out of my way. He Poen was so angry that he couldn't listen to her words. He clasped her hands and raised them above her head. His fingers followed her thighs and directly lifted her skirt, revealing her underwear. You've been coveting my beauty since 5 years ago. Otherwise, why did you desperately suppress me, causing me to owe tens of millions of debts and forcing me to marry you? Wei Wei Bai looked at He Poen in panic. At that time, I was wrong. Now that you have everything you want, you have suppressed me so that I can't enter the entertainment industry. I have already given up. Give up. He Poen didn't expect Wei Wei Bai to say such a thing. He Poen's eyes were cold. That contract was only between him and Wei Wei Bai. He couldn't leak it. So, the only one who leaked it was Wei Wei Bai. He didn't believe that she gave up. This woman must have seen that the contract was about to expire. To keep him, she disclosed their relationship to the public. Now that the internet was abuzz, he was sure that before tomorrow, everyone would know that he Poen, had been kept by this woman. This shame, he finally got rid of. This woman wanted him to carry it for a lifetime. He Poen showed a cruel smile. Do you think you can keep me by leaking the contract? That's not enough. I'll upload your photos to the internet. That'll be the most explosive. With that, he tore her underwear apart with a tug of his fingers. Wei Wei Bai's pupils contracted and her whole body trembled. She wanted to say something, but He Poen had quickly sealed her lips. She wanted to escape, but her limbs were buckled under his body. Even if she wanted to clench her teeth and not let him invade, she couldn't do it. Because his hand firmly grasped her chin, she couldn't escape. This bastard was actually serious. He only had a favorable impression of 10 and he already wanted to do her. She wouldn't swallow her whole when she broke the 100 mark, right? Wei Wei Bai, Tong Tong, at least give me a function to protect the host. The system watched the show while munching on melon seeds. Protect what? Don't get distracted. Hurry up and struggle, cry, run, and linger. It's too explosive, too exciting, too exciting. It's been a long time since I've watched porn since the ban. It's time for me to eat again. Wei Wei Bai, why isn't such a heartless system being sent back to the furnace to be rebuilt? She was the first to rush up and add firewood. Wei Wei Bai was kissed by him and her face flushed. Her eyes were full of panic. She found a gap and gasped, He Poen, don't, please. Her long hair was disheveled, and her clothes were in tatters. Her eyes were filled with tears, and the corners of her eyes were red. Her appearance was simply stunning. He Poen originally came with a punishing mentality and felt that it was unlikely that he would really be interested in her. But when he saw Wei Wei Bai lying so delicate and powerless under him and heard her soft and fragile voice begging for mercy, he was shocked. A hot feeling rushed from his back and rushed to his lower body. It turned out that this shameless woman also had such a weak side. He Poen suddenly wanted to hear more of her begging for mercy. He suddenly wanted to control her and not let her humiliate him again. T. Chapter 106. His hand tore off the last of her clothes, and her naked body appeared in front of him. He Poen's eyes turned red. Any punishment disappeared from his mind. He just wanted to use another method to kill her. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 15. When Wei Wei Bai thought that she was doomed and could only be forced to sell herself, someone suddenly knocked on the door. Nge, open the door. It was Xiao Mu's voice. He Poen was in high spirits and said bluntly, get out. Xiao Mu was scared and quiet for 2 seconds, but the next second he desperately knocked on the door. The paparazzi and your fans, I don't know how they found you here. They will be here soon, you should leave quickly. When He Poen heard this, he immediately reached out and grabbed Wei Wei Bai's neck. You even called the paparazzi. Wei Wei Bai's eyes were red and she said angrily, He Poen, what are you crazy about? I don't know what you are talking about. Is this how you humiliate me? I was blind to like you. Do you know how much I regret it? How could I like a man like you who only knows how to ruin me? I'm cheap. He Poen's jaw tightened and his eyes darkened. Wei Wei Bai didn't care. She began to hit him frantically, trying to kick him away. I don't like you, I don't like you, don't appear in front of me again. I can't wait to tear up the contract, How could I leak it? This sentence stung He Poen's eyebrows. Do you think I can like you for a lifetime without regrets? Now that you're in power, you're suppressing me and ruining my career, forcing me to quit the entertainment industry. You're making me unable to act. Are you happy now? As Bai Weiwei spoke, tears rolled down her face. Feeling wronged, she broke down and cried, "Why are you so bad? Did I just like you? How can you ruin me like this? I don't like you, I let you go, but you still want to ruin me. What do I owe you?" He Poen saw that she didn't seem to be pretending. He hesitated and said coldly, "Didn't you leak the contract?" Weiwei Bai cried and said, "If I wanted to leak it, I would have leaked it. What's the benefit of leaking it at this time? So that you can kill me." Now Weiwei Bai has been hit by He Poen's revenge and can't get up. Although she had some money, she couldn't compete with He Poen. He Poen said coldly, "Didn't you call the reporters?" Weiwei Bai looked at him angrily, "Why did I call reporters? To take my nude photos of me? You may be shameless, but I am. If your photos were taken." The door suddenly opened. He Poen's face was very ugly. "Go." Xiao Mu immediately ran to the car, but when He Poen was about to get in the car, a group of reporters had already run over. "It's He Poen, we found him. He really appeared in XXX community. This is not where Weiwei Bai lives." Weiwei Bai, the retired movie queen, big news. He Poen immediately got in the car and closed the door. His face was gloomy. Damn it. Being targeted by these reporters, he couldn't think of a stable life. Xiao Mu was just about to drive when he thought of something. Where is Sister Weiwei? Once the things between Weiwei Bai and He Poen were leaked, this place would definitely not be safe. Download. Chapter 107. He Poen said coldly, "Why do we care about that woman? Let's go." Xiao Mu could only drive, and the reporters could only give way when they saw the car. The reporters were like dogs that smelled meat. He Poen couldn't be caught, but Weiwei Bai must still be there. They rushed to Weiwei Bai's house and were about to knock on the door when they found that the door was not locked. A bold reporter immediately opened the door and saw Weiwei Bai standing at the door with some messy clothes and messy hair. "You are?" Weiwei Bai frowned and was about to ask. The reporters frantically picked up the camera and took photos. They also picked up the recording pen. "Weiwei Bai, someone said that you are keeping He Poen. Is it true?" Weiwei Bai immediately dodged and said weakly, "What He Poen? I don't know. Is the content of the contract true? He Poen really took tens of millions. Have you been supporting him for the past few years?" Weiwei Bai immediately shook her head, "I don't know him. I don't welcome you. If you don't leave, I will call the police." After that, Weiwei Bai was about to close the door, but in the next second, several fans rushed over crazily. "Weiwei Bai, you slandered our Poen, you bitch." One of the fans took out an egg and threw it at Weiwei Bai. The reporters were even crazier. They couldn't wait to kill her and then make the news bigger. Weiwei Bai was scared and stumbled back a few steps. She tripped and fell to the ground. The reporters immediately took photos of her embarrassment. The fans were even more arrogant. "I let you slander our Poen. How could our Poen like you, an ugly monster?" Ugly monster. The system trembled, saying that the host was an ugly monster. Wasn't she looking for abuse? Weiwei Bai's body was full of broken eggshells. She looked up and stared at the fan. Obviously, her eyes seemed fragile, but it made the fan shiver. The fan was furious. She felt that she had been provoked. There were still eggs in her hand. She raised her hand and wanted to throw them out. However, just as he raised his hand, he was grabbed tightly by someone. The force was so strong that the fan screamed in pain. He Poen pushed away the crazy fan and looked up to see Weiwei Bai fall to the ground, staring blankly at everything in front of her. It was as if the whole world was bullying her. He didn't know why he asked Xiao Mu to come back. If he didn't come back, Weiwei Bai would have been eaten by these people. He Poen said angrily to her, "Is there something wrong with your brain? Why did you open the door? Didn't she work in the entertainment industry before? Don't you know how scary reporters and die-hard fans are? When the reporters saw He Poen, they were even more excited. Film Emperor He, is your relationship with Bai Weiwei a relationship of keeping and being kept? What positions do you like in bed? Are your skills really that good? He Poen suddenly bent down and picked up Weiwei Bai. Xiao Mu called a few bodyguards and then rushed over to protect them. The reporters didn't give up. They wanted to push away the bodyguards and squeeze in front of He Poen. He Poen was expressionless. He took out a hat and put it on Weiwei Bai. Then he let her bury her face in his chest and walked out. He didn't care about the reporters or the fans. Weiwei Bai's slender body was trembling. Her fingers tightly grasped his clothes, as if he was the only one in the world who could protect her. He Poen only felt that there was something itchy in his heart, but he couldn't say why. T. Chapter 108. He Poen had been staying in the hotel arranged by the crew. The matter this time was too big, and the matter of their contract was exposed. It caused a bad effect, and all the reporters chased after them desperately. After finally getting rid of the reporters and fans, He Poen took Weiwei Bai to the new hotel. For safety, He Poen simply asked for a room. Weiwei Bai took a shower and put on the new pajamas. She bought a big size, rolled up the trousers and sleeves, and walked out wearing a large size slipper. He Poen was on the phone. Delete the post and delete the Weibo, idiot. We have done several public relations crises to reduce the popularity. If it really doesn't work, we can just create another hot topic and suppress this matter. The other side seemed to say something. He Poen frowned. You mean this matter has already been on the headlines of the major news, and can't be suppressed? He anxiously walked back and forth a few times, and then fiercely said to the phone, it's too late to delete the post. Start tracking down the person who posted it. Find that villain for me. I want to pinch him to death with one finger. Weiwei Bai, system. If the male lead finds out you posted the post, it is estimated that the scene will be very awkward. Weiwei Bai tried to calm down, and then slowly walked out. He Poen just hung up the phone, and his mood was almost exploding. The shame 5 years ago, he thought he could get over it. The result was now exposed, and he was completely nailed to the pillar of shame for a lifetime. After all, it was that woman's fault. If it weren't for her, how could he have fallen to the point of lying down and being ridiculed? He Poen heard footsteps behind him and fiercely turned back. As a result, he saw Weiwei Bai wearing cute bear-patterned pajamas. Her long hair was draped over her shoulders, and her bright beauty was more soft and lovely. She saw He Poen looking over and couldn't help but take a few steps back. He Poen breathed, and then he said irritably, "What are you doing sneaking around?" Weiwei Bai hesitated, and then asked, "Can you ask your assistant to send some cosmetics over?" She still wanted to put on makeup at this time. She was indeed vain. He Poen sneered, "Why do you want to be beautiful? You don't have any shows to film. Are you planning to appear prettier when you're being chased by the reporters?" Weiwei Bai's eyes flashed with hurt. She lowered her head and hesitated for a few seconds before whispering, "I'm not confident without makeup." He Poen looked at her up and down and found that although the Bai Weiwei without makeup was less gorgeous, she was surprisingly soft without makeup and had a lot less offensive power. In the past, Weiwei Bai looked annoying, but she was too delicate. He Poen felt that she was fake and was no different from the women in the entertainment industry. Now that she had nothing, she looked much more comfortable than before. He Poen coldly snorted, "You're just like this. You're ugly even with makeup on. Anyway, you're not as good looking as me. It's natural that you don't have confidence." Weiwei Bai and the system were speechless. He had never seen such a narcissistic person. Weiwei Bai bowed her head and looked at her big slippers. She seemed to hesitate. He Poen looked at the top of her head. For this woman, he felt resentful and disgusted. But he didn't know why. When he saw her now, there was an unknown emotion rolling in his heart. Weiwei Bai suddenly looked up, her eyes were surprisingly bright. "Let's divorce, He Poen." Chapter 109. He Poen looked at her strangely, his fingers stiff for a moment. Wei Wei Bai seemed to finally be relieved. I know you hate me. I really liked you back then. At that time, I was like the sun in the sky, so I didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I fell in love with you at first sight, but I didn't know how to like someone properly. Poen felt the stiffness penetrate deep into his muscles. He pulled the corners of his mouth unnaturally. What do you mean? Wei Wei Bai said seriously, 5 years ago, I was very naive. I liked you and suppressed you just to get you. It was wrong. Poen smiled strangely. Wrong? This woman insulted him for 5 years, and then waited until it was time for him to abandon her. She said first, she didn't want him anymore. Wei Wei Bai didn't seem to find something wrong with him. Now I'm mature and have given up. I should have divorced you long ago, but because of pride, I didn't know how to say it. Poen looked at her indifferently. So, when you like me, you suppress me to death, and when you don't like me, you let me go. Am I your dog? Wei Wei Bai was a little panicked. I didn't mean that. Poen stepped closer. What do you mean? The matter of the contract hasn't been checked yet, and you want to leave. I suspect that you leaked it because you still like me and don't want me to leave you, so you want to announce our relationship to the world so that I can't divorce you. Wei Wei Bai staggered back. He was too strong, step by step, and she could hardly bear his coercion. I don't like you, Poen. Really, we'll break off the engagement tomorrow. Wei Wei Bai's words didn't fall, but the angry Poen pressed her shoulder, and the huge force made her hit the wall. He also pressed forward, his body close to her. Poen bowed his head. His handsome face made people envious, but there was a kind of twisted irritation flowing. Wei Wei Bai, say that you don't like me one more time. Wei Wei Bai almost couldn't catch her breath. Her eyelashes trembled, and she said seriously again, I don't. Poen bowed his head and kissed her hard. Wei Wei Bai widened her eyes in disbelief. Poen left her and said gloomily, say it again. Wei Wei Bai hesitated and was just about to open her mouth when Poen bowed his head again. This time, she raised her hand to block him. Are you crazy? Wei Wei Bai looked at him in surprise. Poen looked at her fiercely. Try to see if what you said is true or false. If you don't like me, then why are you so afraid of me kissing you? Are you afraid of being tempted? The system was munching on melon seeds. This is the logic of a lunatic. No one would be moved by a pervert's kiss. Wei Wei Bai breathed heavily and finally couldn't bear it. I will hold a press conference tomorrow. At that time, I will tell you what happened 5 years ago. You are the victim of my suppression. Everyone will sympathize with you, and then I will directly break off the engagement with you. Poen's movements stopped. If Wei Wei Bai held a press conference, and truthfully speaking about what happened that year, he was indeed the victim. For him, it was not a scandal, but a reversal of the news. It would be easy to gain a bunch of passers-by fans. Poen looked at her suspiciously. What tricks are you playing? Wei Wei Bai's change was too big, so big that he suspected there was a conspiracy. Bai Wei Wei's face was a little pale, and her smile was a little sad. What conspiracy could I have? I'm just making up for my mistakes. After tomorrow's press conference, you can retreat unscathed. You can also completely break this shameful contract, and even more. At the to read at https://www.soshu. Comto to read at https://m-soshu. Com collection below to record this reading record. Chapter 110. He could leave her completely. When Poen heard this, he should have been happy. But he didn't know why. When he saw Wei Wei Bai's half-dead appearance, his heart was blocked. Poen let go of her and sneered, then I'll wait and see tomorrow. Let me see what you will say at the press conference. Wei Wei Bai breathed a sigh of relief and put down the hand on her mouth. As a result, Poen suddenly bowed his head and kissed her fiercely. Wei Wei Bai's heart jumped and she only felt that the heat on her lips made her scalp numb. Poen's strong breath completely invaded her field and she began to tremble. After the kiss, Wei Wei Bai's face flushed, her fingers clenched and she almost couldn't stand still. Poen smiled proudly. You see, you're so excited and still say you don't like me. You're just deceiving yourself. His heart was finally not so blocked. He Poen turned and was just about to walk away when his clothes were caught. Wei Wei Bai's hesitant voice came from behind. Tomorrow, you can ask your assistant to help me send a set of cosmetics. He Poen heard her unconfident words and his heart softened, but his mouth didn't spare her. You're ugly no matter how you look. Whatever, I'll ask them to send it tomorrow. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 20. Because there was only one luxurious bed in the room, He Poen said bluntly, you sleep on the sofa. Wei Wei Bai hugged a pillow and was speechless for a moment before sleeping on the sofa. When she was lying on the sofa, she finally couldn't help but pinch the system and say, where did you find such a crazy target? Although the first two were also ruthless, they weren't so strange. The system also felt that this target's brain circuit was really strange. It coughed twice, randomly selected, unable to choose. Wei Wei Bai was still angry. Am I ugly? Where am I ugly? People who think I'm ugly are people with problems in their brains. He Poen's brain is not clear. The system felt that something was amiss and said, you think he's crazy because he called you ugly? Wei Wei Bai was furious. Nonsense. My beauty is known to the world. You must be sick to say that I'm ugly. System, it originally thought that He Poen was a snake spirit, but it was wrong. In this world, there was no one more sick than the host. After Wei Wei Bai finished scolding the system, she fell asleep. In the middle of the night, she found someone gently carrying her and placing her on the soft bed. He Poen's voice was soft, it's as heavy as 2 pigs. Wei Wei Bai, after He Poen put her beside him, he deliberately slept far away. This woman had been coveting him, and he was afraid that she would take advantage of him. Wei Wei Bai was lying on her side, oblivious. She was sleeping with a gentle expression on her face. He Poen looked at her. Under the dim yellow light, her appearance was gentle and beautiful. After looking at him for a long time, the repulsive look that he used to find was actually much more pleasing to the eye. He Poen couldn't help but touch his lips. His ears were red. When he kissed her, he felt that her lips were like jelly, soft and sweet. His fingers slowly touched Wei Wei Bai's lips. He pulled back like he had been electrocuted. Then he turned his back to her and stared at the small lamp in front of him. What was he doing? Wasn't Wei Wei Bai the kind of woman he hated the most? Tomorrow, he could get rid of her. But this kind of woman, shouldn't she have some follow-up means to keep him? Would she obediently cancel their engagement? She must be lying to him. She wouldn't dare to hold a press conference tomorrow. When it was dawn, Wei Wei Bai got up early and her assistant brought her clothes and cosmetics. She put on makeup and clothes, bright and moving. Then she did not hesitate to call the reporters. I plan to hold a press conference downstairs at XX Hotel. Come here now, Teether. Chapter 111. He Poen had just woken up when he heard Wei Wei Bai's words. He was a little confused and felt that he must still be dreaming. How could Wei Wei Bai hold a press conference? If she really whitewashed him, she would be completely unable to turn over. He didn't know what kind of mentality he had, but he couldn't wait to see Wei Wei Bai standing on the sofa. She was wearing formal clothes today, a purple high-waisted dress, and her hair was tied into a bun. Because of the beautiful makeup, she looked completely different from yesterday. Yesterday, she was particularly unconfident and even afraid of crowds. But today, she was confident and reserved, and beautiful. He Poen suddenly felt a little confused. Did she have this kind of temperament before? Although she was also very cold and arrogant before, she revealed a particularly annoying feeling. But today, she made him completely unable to hate her. Wei Wei Bai seemed to be aware of his gaze. She turned back and revealed a smile. He Poen, I will go down later and tell you what happened 5 years ago. You are the victim from beginning to end. I suppressed you and framed you to cause that contract, so you don't have to worry about your career. She was cold, self-restrained, and didn't care. He Poen saw her like this, and his stomach faintly hurt. He had a problem with his work, and that was stomach pain. Especially when he was nervous, stomach pain. Wei Wei Bai glanced at the time. The press conference should start. I will go down first. He Poen suddenly opened his mouth. Do you know what you will suffer if you disclose what happened that year? Wei Wei Bai's footsteps paused, and after a moment of silence, she turned back and showed a relieved smile. I know what I will suffer. It was nothing more than being spurned by thousands of people and never being able to appear in public again. But, this is my mistake, so I will end it. Wei Wei Bai's tone was firm, and there was no trace of darkness on her bright face. He Poen reluctantly pulled up the corner of his mouth. What you say sounds good. Who knows what you will say at the press conference later? Wei Wei Bai opened the door and said with her back to him, Don't worry. After this incident, we'll be even. I don't owe you anything anymore. After she finished speaking, she closed the door and left. He Poen was stupefied on the bed. He didn't think that Wei Wei Bai would really go to a press conference. He thought that this woman was lying to him. After all, who would push themselves to eternal damnation? He Poen absent-mindedly got up and stuffed the stomach medicine into his mouth. His stomach finally stopped protesting. He snorted to himself. Who cares? She's the one who's looking for death. When Xiao Mu hurried over, He Poen was watching the live broadcast on his computer. After Wei Wei Bai retired for a few years, the first time she appeared in public was because of her contract with He Poen. Who was He Poen? He was the film emperor. Anything related to him would cause public opinion to explode. The live broadcast of the press conference was carried out. Soon, on the screen, Wei Wei Bai was seen walking calmly. She was not embarrassed at all. Her posture was perfect and elegant. Hypocrite. He Poen bitterly broke the bread that Xiao Mu had brought for breakfast. Xiao Mu saw Wei Wei Bai tidying up the microphone and seemed to be about to start speaking. He said with some worry, if Wei Wei's sister tells the truth, she probably won't be able to leave the hotel. He Poen said coldly, well, who's to blame for her own death? T. Chapter 112. Xiao Mu sighed, your fans are here, and GE. They will probably keep boycotting Wei Wei's sister. The contract made He Poen's fans go crazy. They all thought that it was Wei Wei Bai who made trouble, so they hated Wei Wei Bai very much. If the press conference started and Wei Wei Bai took the blame, she would probably be eaten by those fans. He Poen pinched the bread. He knew the ability of his fans to make trouble. Although other people's fans were crazy, they were not as strong as his fans. If the fans really thought that Wei Wei Bai harmed him, it was estimated that Wei Wei Bai would be stabbed at the door of the hotel, and this was beyond He Poen's control. He Poen stared at the live broadcast screen with dark eyes. I don't believe that this woman is really willing to sacrifice herself to wash my name. As soon as his words fell, Wei Wei Bai's voice sounded. Dear reporter friends, I invited you here this time to clarify the matter of the contract between me and He Poen. As soon as her words fell, He Poen stood up and his face was gloomy. This woman, damn, is she really going to sacrifice herself? Wei Wei Bai's words continued, first of all, I want to tell you that He Poen is innocent. This sentence made He Poen grit his teeth. Wei Wei Bai, you are stupid. If she really said that she had played tricks to get him and then used the contract to bind him, she didn't have to go out on the street in the future. Wei Wei Bai faced the reporters and smiled indifferently. You may think that I am going to say that the contract is fake and photoshopped. No, the contract is real. The reporters were in an uproar. This was really big news. Today's super actor was a duck that was kept by someone in the past. Was there any news more shocking than this? Several reporters rushed forward and wanted to continue to ask questions, but the hotel security was already waiting and stopped them. Wei Wei Bai remained calm in the face of so many people's uproar. She said, you can ask your questions after I'm done. The reporters could only retreat. After all, Wei Wei Bai couldn't run away. Wei Wei Bai's voice was soft, and her face was filled with tender nostalgia. I remember the first time I saw him, he was auditioning for a drama. That was his first audition, and he was a little nervous. He Poen was stunned. His first interview? It seemed like he had auditioned for a drama series. At that time, he had almost been rejected, but in the end, he still got that role. It was also that role that made him stand out in the entertainment industry. Wei Weibai said, the role in that movie was decided internally by another celebrity. He was rejected, but I felt that it was a pity, so I instructed him to get that role. He Poen watched the live broadcast, his nails digging into the flesh of his palm. At that time, was she the one who gave him the first role? Wei Weibai smiled faintly. I think I fell in love with him at first sight. The reporters were desperately recording and filming. The comments under the live broadcast also surged. But to Bai Weiwei, all of this seemed to be of no importance. The second time we met, he had already begun to get some small roles. After all, he was good-looking. She said so bluntly that He Poen was good-looking, but she was not infatuated at all. Instead, she was more indifferent. Wei Weibai said, when he was a supporting role for me, he once held my hand. My heart was beating like thunder. That was the first time I realized that when you like someone, your blood can boil. Secret love is the purest feeling in the world. Chapter 113. He Poen watched the live broadcast. She had a crush on him. Something warm and itchy went along his body and into his heart. He thought for a while before he figured out that it was actually pleasure. Wei Weibai continued, I was immature at that time. I thought that if I loved someone, I should be restrained by his side. But when he really came to me and I saw his unhappy face, I knew I was wrong. Xiao Mu watched the live broadcast and couldn't help but sigh, Sister Weiwei is really whitewashing you, and Ge. He Poen pursed his lips and frowned. He said coldly, I won't be soft-hearted. She's just trying to gain sympathy. Xiao Mu hesitated and said, it doesn't seem like it, and Ge. Sister Weiwei seems to have really given up. Gave up. The pleasure in He Poen's heart dissipated. She gave up. Did she give up her feelings for him? Wei Weibai had some tears in her eyes. She took a deep breath and calmed her somewhat intense emotions. The following words are for him. Please forgive me for being willful. After I finish speaking to him, I will tell him all about the contract. After Wei Weibai finished speaking, she faced the camera. She sat up straight and smiled. Poen, do you know? I collected all your works since your debut. There are newspapers, magazines, books, and your signature, your photos, everything about you. This was done by the original owner. The original owner really liked He Poen, so she collected a lot of his things. Wei Weibai's smile remained unchanged, but there was a trace of sadness between her eyebrows. I know this has troubled you. But please forgive a person who loves you for offending you. I'm like a girl who doesn't know how to grow up. I love you but don't know how to keep you. I did a lot of things that you didn't like, and then in the pain of your rejection, I slowly grew up and my feelings for you faded. When He Poen heard this sentence, he couldn't help but take out a cigarette, lit it, and took a puff. Xiao Mu looked at him in surprise. He Poen rarely smoked unless he was particularly irritated. Wei Weibai sighed. I sincerely apologize for the hurt I caused you in the past. You don't have to worry about me pestering you in the future because I don't love you anymore. When He Poen heard Wei Weibai say this sentence, his head felt like it was hit by a hammer. He frowned, and there was a kind of enduring impatience on his face. Little Mu was a little surprised. Brother, and bang, the door was slammed shut. He Poen had already disappeared from the room. Only half of the flattened cigarette was left. After Wei Weibai finished speaking, she looked at the reporters. The system said, Host, I don't know what you're doing. Aren't you just pushing the male lead far away? If He Poen was washed clean, Wei Weibai would have no excuse to approach him in the future. Wei Weibai sneered, You don't understand the heart of a narcissist. Do you know what is the most unbearable thing for a narcissist? The system was confused. Wei Weibai said firmly, Only I can dump people, no one dares to dump me. In the world, I am the most beautiful, the best, the most arrogant, the most unique. If anyone dares to say that they don't love me, I will kill them. System, why does the host understand the mentality of a narcissist so well? Wei Weibai said, You think I made a scandal just for He Poen to come to me? You are too sweet. I want to use the scandal to announce to the world that I don't love He Poen anymore. Wei Wei Bai looked at the reporters and calmly said, "The contract is not a kept contract. I married her." This sentence was earth-shattering and shocking. Wasn't it kept? How could it be married? Everyone looked back and saw He Poen standing there. His eyebrows were delicate and he was arrogant. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 25. Full text // Download. T. Chapter 114. He Poen acted as if he didn't see the chaotic reporters at the scene. In his eyes, there was only Wei Wei Bai. She sat there, her face full of astonishment and confusion, but there was no surprise. He Poen only felt his heart sink. He walked over step by step, and several reporters immediately came up. "He Poen, you," He Poen simply said, "get lost." He was famous in the industry for acting like a big shot, and his fans also condoned it, because this arrogance brought out his handsomeness, which made him unique in the entertainment industry, and no one could imitate him. The reporters flinched and retreated. He Poen walked to Wei Wei Bai's side. There were no extra chairs, but he didn't care. He directly bent down and pulled the microphone in front of Wei Wei Bai, and said to everyone at the scene, "That contract is just a misunderstanding. When I was in need of money, she lent me the money. The contract is just an IOU. In fact, the contract that Wei Wei Bai shot and uploaded was covered up in many places, but the number of tens of millions and his autograph were more conspicuous. So when He Poen said this, it was impossible to refute." Wei Wei Bai was surprised and wanted to stand up, but He Poen held her shoulder with one hand. His strength seemed not to be big, but he pressed her to the seat. His eyes were cold, and his tone was strong and calm. "As for why she was willing to lend me tens of millions, it was because the two of us were about to get married. It's not a strange thing for a fiancée to lend money to her future husband. System eating melon eating, just watch the male lead talk nonsense with a straight face." He Poen's aura was strong, and his every move had an oppressive momentum. The scene was very quiet. He said coldly, "At that time, I was not famous, so after I married her, the two of us chose to hide our marriage." Hidden marriages were not uncommon in the entertainment industry. Many idols and stars chose to hide their marriage for their career. The contract issue that broke out today affected me very much. Wei Wei was worried that my future would be damaged, so she chose to hide the fact that she married me, and intended to take the contract issue into her own hands. The reporters and fans were stunned. Although they really wanted big news, when the news was so big that it was terrifying, everyone fell silent for a moment. He Poen stood behind Wei Wei Bai. His figure was slender and fit, like a protector. His eyes were cold and his expression was indifferent, but everyone could hear the protectiveness in his tone. "She and I have always been husband and wife. It has been 5 years." He Poen looked at everyone present, "So, put away your dirty words and imagination. I now officially tell everyone that Wei Wei Bai and I are husband and wife, not a mistress." The reporters were crazy. The live stream exploded. The fans were stunned. After the system finished eating the melon, it began to clean up the melon rind. He Poen glanced at the people below with a blank expression. "I'm done. There is no question and answer session. The rest is up to you." After that, he threw the microphone in his hand behind him. Wei Wei Bai's body was so stiff that it was terrible. He Poen's fingers pressed on her shoulders and he could even feel her tense muscles trembling. Her eyes were red as she looked up at He Poen. Then, her eyes flashed with the determination to stake everything on one throw. She pushed away He Poen's hand and was about to say, "No." The next second, He Poen reached out and wrapped his arms around her slender waist, pulling her into his arms. His other hand pressed against the back of her head, and his lips did not hesitate to press down on her restless mouth. T. Chapter 115. This kiss was so strong that it was impossible to escape. Several fans at the scene screamed uncontrollably. He Poen sealed the words in her mouth and took away her soft and sweet breath. Bai Weiwei was forcefully suppressed by him, and didn't even have a chance to resist. After a long time, He Poen finally let go of her. He turned his back to everyone and slowly showed a proud smile, whispering, "You want to dump me? You don't want to owe me? Dream on." Only he didn't want people. Who dared not want him? Didn't love him? Was he the kind of cheap goods that could be loved as and when people said they loved him? Wei Wei Bai's pale face was stained with a trace of red. She was a little overwhelmed and her indifferent eyes revealed a confused mood. She looked like she was completely confused by He Poen and didn't know what this man wanted to do. He Poen saw Wei Wei Bai like this and finally felt like he had control of her again. He didn't know until today that he hated her indifferent and calm look. He Poen took Wei Wei Bai's hand and walked out directly. The fans cried and shouted, "Poen, Poen." They looked sad and angry. He Poen turned back, put his finger to his lips and said coldly, "Shut up, go home and wait for me to post on Weibo." The fans were immediately stunned and didn't know where they were. The reporters weren't shocked and they swarmed up and were just about to ask something. The fans had already started to drive people away. "Get out, didn't you hear our Poen say he's leaving? The press conference is over, don't bother Poen." The reporter vomited blood. "He's married, why are you fans of him?" The fans said in unison, "He's married and can't get divorced." "You're worried about nothing." He Poen's fans had always been so strange and tough. The entertainment industry's only fan support group made He Poen arrogant to walk sideways. They couldn't stay in the hotel. He Poen said bluntly, "Go home." Of course, he didn't go back to Wei Wei Bai's house. The location of her house had been exposed, so He Poen went back to his own apartment. The houses that he had bought over the past few years were worth more than enough to make him rich. One of his apartments was in the center of the city. It was a luxurious penthouse with an outdoor swimming pool and a gym. He Poen spent a lot of money, but he himself was a money tree, so he didn't care about the money. With just a phone call, he sent over all the things that belonged to Wei Wei Bai's original residence. Then he opened his Weibo and wrote, "I'm going home with my wife. Although the news is surprising, I don't think I've done anyone wrong. The only thing I'm sorry about is my fans. I know I made you sad, but I don't regret exposing this matter because I know your love for me isn't so shallow. The person I love is also the person you love. The one I love. She is also the one you love." This sentence caused all the fans to collectively climax. Fan number 1, "Woo woo, Bobo, I'm sorry. It's all our fault. We will love you. It's just a marriage. Even if you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mistresses, we will still support you." Fan number 2, "So moved, so moved. Our Bobo is really the most affectionate, the most beautiful, and the most unique." Fan number 3, "It's just a marriage. Why do you have to hide it? Isn't this wronging yourself? If you had said earlier, we wouldn't have blamed you." Chapter 116. Antifans. I originally wanted to say something bad, but when I saw Wei Wei Bai sacrificing herself to protect He Poen, I felt moved. Fan number 4. I agree with the person above. I'm moved too. Number 5. Love you, love your refill, refill, refill. A passerby. Number 6. My Bobo is still so handsome even though he's married. The system passed by silently. A bunch of lunatics. He Poen's Weibo successfully passed the public relations crisis. Then, he finally couldn't take it anymore. He threw the phone away and covered his stomach with his hand. His face turned pale. Damn it, my stomach is acting up again. His gastric problem was the after-effect of working day and night for the past few years. Originally, he had almost fully recovered, but once he was overly anxious, he would act up. Today's events caused his illness to erupt completely. Although he seemed to have suppressed everything, before he succeeded, he was walking on a tightrope and could fall off the cliff at any time. The entertainment industry was a very cruel place. Once one fell, it was almost impossible to climb back to the top. Wei Wei Bai was suppressed by him. After a few years, almost no one remembered her. He Poen endured the stomach pain and suddenly thought of something. He picked up his phone and rushed to Wei Wei Bai. "Smile sweetly." Wei Wei Bai was confused. "What do you want to do?" He Poen snorted, "Clean up the mess." He sat down beside her and said, "Lean on my shoulder." Wei Wei Bai hesitated for a moment before obediently leaning on his shoulder. Her hair was close to his cheek, and the fresh breath made He Poen tremble. He Poen endured the pain in his stomach and revealed a calm smile. His eyes were full of affection. "Smile," he ordered. Wei Wei Bai instinctively revealed a sweet smile. He Poen immediately pressed the button on his, took this photo, and then directly posted it on Weibo. Then, he wrote, "I have spent 5 years with her. I still love her deeply and have no regrets." Wei Wei Bai was speechless for a moment, then she silently knocked on the system. "Fuck, He Poen, this guy is better than me. I'm under a lot of pressure." The system said, "Don't worry, you're the best at acting. Kill him, I have faith in you." Wei Wei Bai nodded and accepted the system's encouragement. After He Poen posted on Weibo, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. He casually threw away his phone and immediately pressed down on Wei Wei Bai. Wei Wei Bai was shocked. "He Poen, what do you want to do?" After she finished speaking, she realized that something was wrong. He Poen's face was extremely ugly. He bent over and covered his stomach with his hand, as if he was suffering a great ordeal. He had difficulty breathing. "The medicine is in the cabinet in the living room. Help me get it." Wei Wei Bai was a little frightened and her reaction was a little slow. He Poen seemed to have misunderstood. He showed a pale smile. "Why, you really don't love me anymore? So you want me to die from the pain? You're still joking at this time." Wei Wei Bai finally realized what was wrong with him. She immediately got up and ran to the living room to look for the medicine. He Poen trembled in pain and looked at Wei Wei Bai's back in a daze. His mood was better. She said that she didn't care about him and didn't love him. Women were animals who didn't mean what they said. She didn't love him, he didn't believe it. Ding, the male lead's favorability has increased to 30, /. Chapter 117. Wei Wei Bai found the stomach medicine and immediately poured warm water to He Poen. He Poen was in so much pain that he was about to lose consciousness. He felt like his stomach was being stirred by a knife. It was so painful that his eyes turned black and his head was confused. Bai Wei Wei touched his head, which was covered in cold sweat. "Poen, take some medicine." Wei Wei Bai touched his face and tried to put the medicine into his mouth. He gritted his teeth and his face turned blue. The medicine couldn't be put in at all. Wei Wei Bai was a little anxious. She tried to open his mouth, but he shivered and didn't open his mouth at all. Wei Wei Bai wanted to call an ambulance. He Poen seemed to know what she was going to do. He endured the pain and reached out to hold her. "Medicine, give it to me, you can't go to the hospital." Wei Wei Bai quickly turned back, reached out and hugged him. She stuffed the medicine into his mouth and then gave him water. He Poen had exhausted his strength to say those words. He even lost the strength to swallow water. The medicine was in his mouth but he still couldn't swallow it. Suddenly, his lips were warm. Wei Wei Bai kissed him and poured a mouthful of water into his mouth, forcing him to swallow. He Poen's eyelashes trembled and he struggled to open his eyes. He saw Wei Wei Bai's eyes full of worry. He rested his head on her thighs and his hands were still tightly grasping her clothes. This posture was very much like an insecure boy looking for a warm place to stay. He Poen remembered that there were times when he had stomach pain. Those days, he would go find the medicine by himself and then endure the pain alone until the medicine took effect. The feeling was not very good, but it was even worse to be seen in a distressed state. So he would rather endure alone than let others see his distressed side. But when Wei Wei Bai hugged him, he felt very strange and didn't want to avoid it. Suddenly, he was pushed back to the sofa by Wei Wei Bai, and then she turned and walked away. He Poen frowned, his face was pale and he wanted to struggle. His fingers couldn't help but want to grab her again. But she walked too fast, and he couldn't catch anything. When Wei Wei Bai came back, she saw He Poen's face full of despair. Was it really that painful? Then she saw He Poen's eyes shining as he stared at her. She had the illusion that she was being stared at by a vicious dog. Wei Wei Bai reached out and unbuttoned his clothes. Then, she put the hot towel on him. He Poen trembled. She thought he was in pain and immediately reached out to touch his hair, as if to comfort him. It won't hurt anymore. Bear with it. Wei Wei Bai was serious and gentle. She pressed her hand on his abdomen. The heat of the hot towel could have a therapeutic effect. In the past, when she was sick, a hot compress often worked. The effect of the drug made his stomach no longer feel the sharp pain. He Poen didn't know why, but he didn't push her away. Instead, he pretended that he couldn't get up and lay weakly on the sofa, enjoying the touch of her fingers. Wei Wei Bai whispered, "It doesn't hurt anymore. It won't hurt anymore." He Poen's face slowly improved. He began to feel comfortable. He was too tired these days. With Wei Wei Bai's gentle voice, he fell asleep. This sleep was particularly comfortable. When he woke up, he found that he was still lying on the sofa, covered with a quilt. "Where is Wei Wei Bai?" He Poen immediately jumped up, feeling a little anxious. He suddenly heard a sound coming from the kitchen. His heart was happy and he immediately rushed to the kitchen. This woman actually cooked for him. She said that she didn't love him so firmly, but in the blink of an eye, she still couldn't let him go. He walked into the kitchen and was about to raise a triumphant smile. "Nji, you're awake?" Xiaomu, a 1.9m strong man, was wearing an apron. He was holding a pot and smiled at him like a good wife. Chapter 118. He Poen's face turned black. "How come it's you?" Xiaomu smiled brightly. "Sister Wei Wei asked me to come. She said you were too tired and asked me to cook some millet porridge for you to nourish your stomach." He Poen looked around. "Where is she?" Xiaomu put the pot on the table and said, "Sister Wei Wei said she was leaving." He Poen felt like he was still asleep. "Leaving? Where is she going?" Xiaomu filled the porridge. "She said that things are too big and she wants to go abroad to avoid the limelight." He Poen felt that the surroundings were quiet and his whole person was a little confused. He said slowly, "She's going abroad." Xiaomu nodded. "Yes, when I came in this morning, I saw Sister Wei Wei packing her luggage. I helped her pack it. By the way, she said that there was something on the table in the living room for you." He Poen smiled angrily. "Oh, something for me?" Xiaomu immediately smiled. "I didn't peek. Maybe it's a love letter or something." He Poen saw Xiaomu's smile and felt that his brain was going to explode. He immediately rushed to the living room and saw that there was indeed a big envelope on the table. He picked it up and opened it. There was the divorce agreement and the original marriage certificate of the two of them. Was he asking him to get a divorce by himself? He Poen tore the divorce agreement in his hand, stuffed the marriage certificate into his pocket, and then rushed to the kitchen. Which foreign country is she going to? More than 200 foreign countries. Which one is it? Xiaomu was frightened by He Poen's terrible eyes. It seems to be the United States. Her flight was at 10 this morning. He Poen grinned at him. "Very good, if I can't get her back, I will put you in the toilet and flush the toilet 100 times. After that, He Poen immediately rushed out of the door. He angrily rushed to the airport. "Wei Wei Bai, you dare to divorce me? I am such a perfect man. You didn't hold my thigh and beg me not to leave, but you dare to give me the divorce agreement." Airport lobby. Wei Wei Bai held the makeup mirror and looked at her own face with melancholy. "Everyone, this face can't be compared to the previous one. Although it was also beautiful. But in the previous plane, she was a stunning beauty. Beauty and peerless beauty were two different things. The system was expressionless. What's the difference? Isn't it just a combination of two mung bean eyes, a long nose, and a pair of sausage lips? Wei Wei Bai, serves this system right for being single, hey?" Wei Wei Bai looked at the time and felt that it was about time, so she anonymously sent a message to the reporters. The system looked at it curiously. "What are you sending?" "Wei Wei Bai, He Poen is at the airport." The system looked around. "Where? Why didn't it see He Poen?" Wei Wei Bai sneered. "He Poen can't wait for all the men and women in the world to chase after him. If he sees me running away, he will definitely chase after me. I'll wake him up and let him know what it means to let him do as he pleases. I won't serve him." System. What an unrhyming poem. When He Poen arrived at the airport, it was not yet 10 o'clock. He was surrounded by people and couldn't find Wei Wei Bai at all. Could it be that she entered the departure hall? He Poen was anxious. He didn't even realize that he wasn't angry, but anxious. He suddenly saw a familiar figure. Was it Wei Wei Bai? He immediately rushed over and grabbed her. Just as he was about to say something, he saw that it was a strange woman. He Poen's face was gloomy and he immediately let go of her. Regardless of other people's strange eyes, he turned around and looked for her. T. Chapter 119. Searching and searching, he felt like a headless fly. Suddenly, he paused. Damn, what am I looking for? Isn't it better that Wei Wei Bai is gone? Isn't he eager to get rid of her as soon as possible? What's wrong with him looking for her? He Poen pulled the scarf covering his face and thought viciously, it's better that she's gone. Anyway, I hate her. He turned around and was about to leave when he saw Wei Wei Bai pulling her luggage and walking towards the entrance of the departure hall. At this moment, his brain exploded like fireworks, as if there was a fierce electric current flowing through his body. He finally found her. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 35. Wei Wei Bai heard the familiar reminder and couldn't help but look up. She saw He Poen wearing sunglasses and most of his face was wrapped in a scarf. He rushed towards her like he was on fire. Before she could react, her passport, plane ticket, and everything else were snatched away from her. He Poen directly tore her ticket and stuffed her passport into his pocket, then reached out and grabbed her fingers. Just like catching an escaped prisoner, he couldn't wait to take out handcuffs and lock her up. Wei Wei Bai saw that her ticket was torn and couldn't help but get angry. What are you doing? He Poen. He Poen righteously said, I'm taking you back. Wei Wei Bai felt a headache. She tried to explain, I have to go abroad. Our matter is too big, and I have already promised you a divorce. I will let you go. He Poen coldly snorted, fake kindness, let me go? Do you know what situation I am in now? To prevent you from becoming a target of scorn, I sacrificed myself and tried my best to save your public image. In the end, you just walked away. Wei Wei Bai struggled with some excitement. Let me go, He Poen. He Poen's eyes were red with anger. Now I have the final say, come back with me. Wei Wei Bai was unmoved and looked at him coldly. When the two people were wrestling, reporters suddenly rushed in from the airport entrance. Where is He Poen? I see him. I've studied him for so long. I can recognize him even if he turns into a woman. He's over there. He Poen's attention was attracted by Wei Wei Bai. He lost his vigilance and was surrounded by reporters. The reporters shoved microphones, recording pens, and autograph papers in front of him, as if they wanted to stuff them into his mouth. Movie King He, are you trying to change your mind about your marriage? Movie King He, are you and Wei Wei Bai trying to get married? Mr. He, my sister wants me to ask for your autograph. He Poen's gloomy face turned into a spring breeze. He smiled and hugged Wei Wei Bai. Hello, are you here to send us off? The reporters were confused. He Poen was extremely gentle. My baby and I are preparing to go on our 10th honeymoon trip. Wei Wei Bai and the system, I can't compare to you in terms of the speed at which you change your face. When the reporters heard that it was a honeymoon trip, they felt that it was okay. After all, the movie King's honeymoon trip was a good news headline. He Poen was very familiar with them. He also greeted the fans who found him, and then pulled Wei Wei Bai to the entrance of the departure hall. They didn't have tickets and couldn't get in. As a result, He Poen said something to the airport staff and went directly through the VIP channel. He turned a corner and walked out of the airport. He stuffed Wei Wei Bai into his car and was just about to drive. Wei Wei Bai was already cold. He Poen, that's enough. The fake smile on He Poen's face disappeared. He sneered, you're the one who's enough. Wei Wei Bai, do you want to attract my attention? Wei Wei Bai's face was pale. She looked at him blankly. Suddenly, the tears in her eyes couldn't be held back anymore. She looked at him with tears flowing down her face. Looking at him, his heart was in chaos. Teether. Chapter 120. Wei Wei Bai reached out and wiped her tears, then tried to maintain a calm tone and said, "He Poen, don't play with me. I admit that I lost, I can't afford to play with you." He Poen reached out and grasped the steering wheel. "I played with you? Didn't you get tired of playing with me and then kick me away?" In the beginning, she forced him to marry for less than 5 years. Well, he hadn't kicked her away yet, but this woman took the initiative to leave. This made He Poen's breath choke. He wanted to kill someone. Wei Wei Bai had recovered her calmness. She turned her face and looked out of the window. "If you say you're tired of playing with me, then I don't want to stay with you." He Poen felt that Bai Wei Wei must have done it on purpose. Every sentence poked at his explosive point. He immediately drove and stepped hard on the accelerator. "You say you want to leave. Now the news has changed to I love you. The contract has damaged my image. If you let the secret marriage become a divorce, my future will be over. You can't be thinking of this idea." Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips and said indifferently, "I didn't expect you to come out and say that we are in a secret marriage. You also posted on Weibo that we are very sweet." He Poen was choked by her and became angry. "I'm willing. Wei Wei Bai, I'm also willing to leave." He Poen suddenly stopped the car. "Get out of the car." Wei Wei Bai looked up. "Civil Affairs Bureau?" He Poen took out the marriage certificate. "If you really want to leave, just go in with me and get the divorce done." He felt that Wei Wei Bai must be playing hard to get. Otherwise, she wouldn't let him go before, but now she said she wanted to leave. How could anyone be so free and easy? Wei Wei Bai saw the marriage certificate in his hand and a touch of sadness appeared on her face. Then she reached out and grabbed one of the marriage certificates in his hand, opened the door and went out. "Okay, let's divorce." He Poen was stunned and began to panic. The remaining marriage certificate in his hand suddenly felt hot. But seeing Wei Wei Bai's cold face, he also opened the door and got out of the car. He said coldly, "Let's get a divorce then." He Poen wrapped his face with a scarf and followed Wei Wei Bai into the Civil Affairs Bureau. He Poen's face was dark as he sat in a chair with Wei Wei Bai and waited. In one of the couples, the woman kept crying. "I've loved you for so long, but you've never looked back at me. I told myself that if I still can't make you love me after 10 years, then I won't love you anymore." The man said, "Aren't we living well?" The woman said, "You don't love me." The man said, "You can live on even if you don't love her. You're just looking for trouble." The woman finally couldn't take it anymore. She stood up and slapped him. "Do you think I can love you for the rest of my life? If you love someone and don't get a response, your love will disappear. I have loved you for 10 years, not 10 days. Let me tell you, I don't love you anymore. If I don't love you, I won't divorce you. I'm not that cheap. If love is not reciprocated, love will disappear." When He Poen heard these words, the emotions in his heart were tumbling. Uncomfortable and uneasy. Love will disappear. Could it be that Wei Wei Bai's love for him had disappeared? He Poen suddenly wasn't sure whether it was right or wrong to pull her to the Civil Affairs Bureau and scare her into divorce. What if Wei Wei Bai wasn't playing hard to get? He Poen waited patiently. Maybe she would find an excuse not to divorce him later. But when everyone was divorced and only the two of them were left, Wei Wei Bai still didn't say that she wanted to leave. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.